June 12th City Council meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Monica Duran,
Here.
Zachary Urban,
Present.
Janice Hoppy,
Present.
George Pond,
Present.
Christy Davis, Tim Fitzgerald,
Here.
Larry Matthews,
Here.
Genevieve Wooden.
Here.
Madam Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the minutes of May 27 council minutes, as well as study session notes of May 15? No changes, then they are approved as presented to us. We're going to move right to proclamations and ceremonies, and we're having a very special recognition tonight of Officer Mark Cooney, who had been 38 years of service to the Wheat Ridge Police Department, and Catherine Workus is going to do a letter and presentation from the office of Perlmutter.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for being here. I'd like to read, this is kind of a very special proclamation, and it's called a congressional record, and what that means is that on the House floor, that there's every proceeding that is done, there's every notes, everything kind of like here, but on a bigger level, every meeting and everything that goes on the House floor is recorded. And it's put into what's called a congressional record so that you can find it and you can look for it and you can see it. And so sometimes, it's like on the floor, they get one, each representative gets a minute. But so this is a congressional record, so it will be read into the official record of Congress. I'm sorry, I don't know what date, but we can find that out for you. So I would like to read this afternoon. Congressional Record, Proceedings and Debates of the 115th Congress, First Session, House of Representatives. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize and applaud Wheat Ridge Police Commander Mark Cooney for his decades of service to the city of Wheat Ridge, Colorado. For 38 years, Commander Cooney has been active within the community and the police department, serving constituents of Wheat Ridge. Commander Cooney started his career in 1979 after graduating first in his class at the Police Academy. Mark's career has consistently shown his commitment to law enforcement and building community partnerships. His work as a field training officer and later detective showed his special acumen in investigations, being recognized by the 1st Judicial District Attorney's Office as Investigator of the Year by solving a difficult burglary case. Mark was promoted to sergeant, then lieutenant, and finally serving as commander, all the while excelling at investigations and as a leader in the department's emergency management planning. Mark has shown his thirst for learning by earning a Master's of Criminal Justice degree from the University of Colorado, graduating from the Northwestern University School of Staff and Command, as well as graduating from the FBI National Academy. As the Chief of Police for the city of Wheat Ridge noted, Mark's dedication exemplifies their vision statement of exceptional people providing exceptional service. His hard work and dedication every day to making the community of Wheat Ridge a great place to live and work demonstrates his exemplary work as a police officer in Wheat Ridge. I extend my deepest thanks to Commander Cooney for his service to the community. Thank you for your continuous dedication to serving the people and the city of Wheat Ridge, Colorado. Thank you. Signed, Ed Perlmutter, Member of Congress.
Thanks for the community of Wheat Ridge, the support for all those years. Served in a lot of different capacities on a lot of different kinds of cases. lot of adventures, a lot of excitement, a lot of challenges. It's been fun. I started here when I was 24 years old, worked till I was 63. Quite a career. It's been a good one. The reason I stayed at one place for my entire career was the great staff members represented by department heads here today, all the different departments. Great police officers I've worked with, represented as well, and all the great support from the community. Thank you.
We have some marvelous policemen in our department. I'm really proud to be a part of this. We move to citizens' right to speak, starting with Andy Rasmussen. Andy, you want to come forward? These are items not on the agenda.
Hello and good evening. My name is Andy Rasmussen. I live at 4465 Moore Court in District 4. Full disclosure, I'm a solar installer myself, and I am also a member of the Wheat Ridge Environmental Sustainability Committee, or RESCO as I like to call it. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of Resolution 21-2017. I know that in the U.S. there is still a lot of disagreement over climate change. I'm not here to change anyone's mind tonight, but I hope we can all agree that human activity is having some impact on the climate. We have probably all seen the brown cloud over Metro Denver, and I don't believe anyone would say that is a good thing. Let us think of the global impact of all the brown clouds and do what we can locally to clean up our small patch of earth. Energy efficiency and renewable energy are this century's greatest opportunities for economic growth. Solar jobs alone grew by 25% last year and have tripled since 2010. According to U.S. Energy Information Association, in 2016, renewable energy accounted for about 10% of total U.S. energy consumption and 15% of electricity generation. Imagine how those jobs are going to grow as the percentage of renewable energy in the U.S. continues to increase. Energy efficiency measures have the potential to create thousands more jobs and save home and business owners money as well. The same is also true of water efficiency measures. By now, a lot of the men in this room will have seen the flushless urinals in bathrooms. Each of these is said to save over 40,000 gallons of water per year. Think of how much water we could save by installing more of these. There are many ideas like these out there that will create jobs, save money in the long run, and make our world a better place. I believe it is in the best interest of everyone to educate ourselves about these opportunities, and the Mayor's National Climate Action Agenda and RESCO are two great ways for Wheat Ridge to move forward in the pursuit of these goals. Thank you.
Thank you. I had announced this as items not on the agenda, but they both are, but I don't think we have any other sign-up sheet. However, I'm going to ask Rob Robinson to come forward, once again, on an item that's on the agenda.
Thank you. Rob Robinson, 4 Hillside Drive. I'm in the district of George Pond and Tim Fitzgerald. I'm also a member of the new Wheat Ridge Environmental Sustainability Committee. I wanted to speak during this open mic period to mention, to pass along a new book. It's called Climate of Hope, and it's by Michael Bloomberg, the ex-mayor of New York, and Carl Pope from the Sierra Club. The reason I think this is important to the city council and citizens, and also to the committee, is that it has a great, what I think is a great list of the things that cities can do. Often we read about sustainability and one group wants to take one tack and another group wants to take another tack. This book summarizes the things that cities can contribute to sustainability. And what impressed me about it was it was not so long ago that New York City was in the throes of bankruptcy. We were trying to get money from the federal government, get them out of bankruptcy. The federal government said no thanks, but through many efforts, including trying to make the community more sustainable, it's become a much more vibrant city. So I would like to donate to this to the city's library. And so any of you that might be interested in taking a look at the book, either from the city council or the staff members of the city who might be working with our committee, can take a look at it if they wish. Thank you. Oh, who should I give the book to? Should I give it to you?
At this point, if the clerk would be fine. Thank you very much. Do we have any other speakers? I don't think so. Eric, I see you did. Okay, that's fine. It's time to approve the agenda. Are there any changes in tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we can go forward with the consent agenda. I believe, Mr. Pond, that's yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to present the consent agenda. Item number A, motion to award a contract to Colorado Designscapes Incorporated, Centennial, Colorado, in the amount of $2,209,000 for Phase 1 construction of Prospect Park. Item B, motion to award a contract and approve payment to Revenue Recovery Group Incorporated, RRG, for the tax audit of 4 major construction projects in an amount not to exceed $36,300. Item C, motion to award ITB-17-03 2017 overlay project-based bid and bid alternates 1, 2, 4, and 5 to Martin Marietta Materials, Westminster, Colorado, in the amount of $1,504,856.39 with a contingency amount of $75,250. Item D, motion to cancel the study session of the Wheat Ridge City Council on July 3rd, 2017 due to the Independence Day holiday. Item E, resolution number 18-2017 approving an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Mountain View and the City of Lakeside, providing resurfacing of 44th Avenue between Harlan Street and Sheridan Boulevard. And finally, item F, resolution 19-2017 approving an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with the City and County of Denver regarding Denver Water's Ashland Reservoir. Is a motion in order?
Motion's in order.
I move to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, D, E, and F.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Davis. Please cast your votes.
Madam Mayor, if I could ask just a couple of questions of clarification.
Certainly.
In item B, if I assume staff can answer these, are the 2 veterinary hospitals mentioned as 2 different businesses? In item 1B, we talk about 2 veterinary hospitals. Are there 2 different, are those 2 separate businesses, or?
Those are 2 separate businesses.
Okay. And then what is the multi-unit tower?
It's a residential project, I believe. So it wouldn't be appropriate for me to say a specific name or location, but it is a residential construction project that took place.
And how much revenue is expected?
So we have a budget of 36,106. Is it 31,600? I'm sorry.
36,300.
Thank you. Sorry, trying to do this without information in front of me. We don't necessarily come up with a projected revenue amount because we don't know exactly how much we will recoup through this audit process. We don't set a baseline that we're anticipating X amount of revenue dollars. But those are 4 major construction projects. And so last year, for example, we did a similar process ended up refunding 2 projects because they actually overpaid when they pulled their permits. And we didn't recoup as much with 2 other projects as we anticipated. So we don't go in with an expectation that we'll recoup a certain amount.
Okay, thank you. And if I may, on items 1C, on the overlay map in the packet, are all the projects covered, indicated, except 32nd and Kipling to Union?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Matthews, could you repeat the last part of that question?
On the overlay map for item 1C, the overlay program,
Okay.
are all the projects indicated except 32nd Avenue and Kipling to Union? They're all covered?
They are covered, correct.
Okay. And then item 1D, the figures indicate that Mountain View and Lakeside are sharing apparently cost, right? And what is Wheat Ridge's share of Harlan to Sheridan?
I don't have that broken out. I think on the IGA amendment next, which is one of the other items we have it 44th scheduled for paving from Vance, almost Wadsworth, all the way to Sheridan. So we have that cost broken out, the city's share from Vance to about Fenton Street. So the city's portion east of Harlan is just that half of 44th from Harlan to Fenton. And then the rest of it is all Mountain View and Lakeside.
What about from Harlan to Sheridan?
Yeah, Harlan to Sheridan is shared by the 3 cities. From Harlan to Sheridan, the whole north half is Lakeside, and then the south half, it's Wheat Ridge to about Fenton, and then Fenton to Sheridan is Mountain View.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any other discussion? Please cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Item 3, Ms. Wooden? 2. That was 2. Oh, you're right, 2, sorry. Item 2, which was Mr. Mathis.
Item 2 is a resolution number 17-2017. A resolution approving a 2-lot subdivision plat with a right-of-way vacation for property zoned mixed-use neighborhood, MUN, and mixed-use commercial transit-oriented development, MUC-TOD, at 11818 West 52nd Avenue, case number MS-17-03/Hans Ranch. At issue, the applicant is requesting approval of a 2-lot subdivision plat for property zoned mixed-use neighborhood and mixed-use commercial transit-oriented development at 11818 West 52nd Avenue. The request also includes a right-of-way vacation for Taft Street. The proposed plotting area is approximately 7.3 acres. The purpose of the subdivision is to split the development parcel in accordance with the new zoning classifications, vacate existing right-of-way, and dedicate new right-of-way in anticipation of property development.
Thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing and swear in anyone who'll be speaking. Do you solemnly swear that all the information given is true as you know it to be? I do. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Good evening. For the record, Meredith Recker, Wheat Ridge Community Development Department, and I'm here to present case number MS-1703, which again is a request for approval of a 2-lot subdivision with a right-of-way vacation on property at 11818 West 52nd Avenue. I would like to enter into the record the comprehensive plan, the zoning ordinance, the case file and packet materials, and the contents of this digital presentation. All notification and posting requirements have been met, therefore council does have jurisdiction to hear this case. So the property in question is colored in blue with the red arrow pointing towards it. It was rezoned in August of 2016 from R1 to MUN, mixed-use neighborhood, on the north, and mixed-use commercial TOD on the south. The property extends from 52nd Avenue south to Ridge Road and from Tabor Street west to Taft Court. It's 7.3 acres in size and was most recently used for agrarian purposes. Again, the property was rezoned from R1 to MUN and MUC-TOD in August of 2016. The MUC-TOD, which is the lighter color blue, is on the south side, and it's intended for areas within a half mile of transit stations. It permits a wide range of commercial and residential uses to allow higher densities that support transit ridership. The northern portion, MUN, is a less intensive zone district. It is the darker blue in the overhead, and it is established to encourage medium-density mixed-use development in which residential uses are permitted into some limited range of neighborhoods serving retail uses. So this is a 2016 aerial of the property. Again, it is outlined in red, and you can see the boundaries: 52nd Avenue on the north, Ridge Road on the south, Taft Court on the west, and Tabor Street on the east. The property was originally subdivided in 1953 into 25 parcels. The zoning at that time was R1, and it was a typical R1 subdivision with a street extending down the middle. That was Taft Street, with lots coming off on either side. There were also a row of lots going down Tabor Street. And to give you some context, what you're seeing on the aerial with the parcel lines in there, this represents that 1953 plat that was done. Again, it was platted and had zoning in place in 1953. However, the property was never developed, and the owner kept it for farming purposes and as a home. Properties that surround the subject site include a variety of land uses. To the west, we've got an RV storage lot and parking for the commuter rail station. To the south is right-of-way for Tabor Ridge Road intersection, and then beyond that, the new rail tracks. To the east is a low-density neighborhood zoned R2 with a mix of single and two-family dwellings. And across 52nd Avenue to the north, again, is a low-density residential neighborhood with both unincorporated Jefferson County and City of Arvada. So the very southwestern corner of the property is opposite the RTD Wheat Ridge Ward Station, which is the Gold Line commuter rail end-of-line station that is slated to open in 2017. And you can see the property in question is just right here over to the northeast. We've already seen a large amount of public improvement in this area, including realignment of Tabor Street, installation of a traffic signal at Tabor and Ridge, construction of Taft Court between 50th Place and Ridge, and then, of course, construction of the commuter rail station and the other infrastructure required to support that use when it opens. So taking a look at some of the aerials, some photos of the area. This first picture is looking southeast towards the rail station improvements. You can see those in the background. This is looking north on Taft Court, which is the new street that runs between Ridge and 52nd Avenue. And the subject property is over on the right-hand side of the image. This is looking west along 52nd Avenue. This is looking south. I was on the north side of 52nd Avenue when I took this picture, and it is the front of the existing home that is there. This is looking south along Tabor with the property under discussion on the right-hand side of the image. And then another view from Tabor showing more of the farm buildings. And then this is down at the intersection of Ridge Road and Tabor. So subsequent to the zone change being approved by City Council in August, the applicant did apply and get approved a concept plan for the property, which is part of the process for the mixed-use zoning. The concept plan shows the entire area being divided not quite in half, maybe 1/3, 2/3, by what's going to be a future street, which is West 51st Avenue. And what that does is it divides the property in half that follows the zoning on it. So there's a northern planning area, which is north of 51st Avenue, and that would be the MUN zone property. And then the southern piece, which is south of 51st Avenue, and that's the higher density mixed-use commercial TOD. The uses approved for the northern area are up to 80 townhouse units. On the south, there's a little bit more flexibility built in with either 60 townhome units or 250 multifamily apartment units. The concept plan also addresses things like drainage, traffic circulation, architecture in somewhat of a broader sense. So the application we're looking at tonight is comprised of 3 sheets. The sheet 1 is what I like to call the declaration page, and it contains the legal description and required signature blocks for property owners. There's a recording block for Jefferson County Recorder's Office, and then notes. This second piece of the plat set is the vacation sheet. So what this plat represents is how the 1953 subdivision was laid out. It's got Taft Street, which runs down at this location, and then with the R1 lots coming off that. As part of the subdivision, or in order to move forward, we have to vacate all of the street right-of-way and all the easements that were dedicated by that 1953 plat. So that's what this second page does. And then finally, the third sheet is actually what the new lot configuration will look like. Again, Lot 1 is the northern parcel, which is the MUN zone piece, is about 3.9 acres in size. Lot 2, which is the southern piece, is about 2.5 acres in size, and it encompasses the MUC TOD zoning on the south side. Again, the division line between the 2 districts is the right-of-way to be dedicated for 51st Avenue. It will be built as a full-width street between Taft Court on the west and Tabor on the east. And again, the plat is consistent with not only the zoning that was approved by council in August, but also by the concept plan that was approved by the community development staff in March. So the requirement for the extension of 51st Avenue is supported by some of the city's guiding documents. This is an excerpt from the Northwest Sub-Area Plan, and it is the future land use map. The property we're looking at is right in here, and you can see that this is 51st Avenue, and it extends all the way over from Tabor to Ward. So as subsequent properties to the west develop, they will also dedicate within that alignment. So we get that connection. This is another piece out of the Northwest Sub-Area Plan, and it's the bike and ped circulation map. And again, it does show 51st as going through as not only a street, but also as a bike and pedestrian way. Further goals that are identified by the sub-area plan include a goal to increase the number of streets for internal access for business, residents, and transit users, a goal to establish a grid of north, south, east, west internal streets with pedestrian amenities, and finally the goal for implementation of complete streets with curb, gutter, sidewalk, including bike lanes and pedestrian ways. And staff does conclude that the plat with the dedication of 51st Avenue is consistent with those guiding documents. Part of the approval is to include the vacation of the old Taft Street as it ran down the middle of the property as platted in 1953. We don't do vacations a great deal. We do have specific criteria that we use to evaluate a vacation request that's included in the Chapter 26, the Zoning and Development Code, and the criteria are as follows, and I've got those up on the screen, that the proposed vacation will not leave any adjoining land without access to an established public right-of-way, that the proposed vacation is in conformity with most recently enacted goals and policies of the transportation section of the comp plan, and in this situation, it was the Northwest Sub-Area Plan. that the proposed vacation will not have a negative impact on the infrastructure of the city, that adequate easements have been reserved for use and/or maintenance by the city or other utility agencies. We have concluded that all these criteria have been met, and so we're supporting approval of the vacation as part of the subdivision approval. So the property, again, it has been zoned. That was the first step of the process for redevelopment. Again, this was reviewed, the zone change was reviewed by Planning Commission in June, about a year ago, and they did recommend approval. It was then approved by City Council on August 8th. Staff reviewed a concept plan, which was consistent with that approval in March of 2017. And again, it was consistent with not only the zone change that occurred on the property, but also the concept of the 51st Avenue extension. This application is the first step of the plat process. We did go through our typical 15-day referral with no concerns from city departments or other agencies. The plat is consistent with the zone change and the concept plan, and it was reviewed by Planning Commission in May, who recommended approval without conditions. And then tonight, of course, is the final public hearing on this plat. The next steps of the approval is that the applicant would apply for an administrative site plan review and a subdivision plat to further break down lots 1 and 2 into townhome parcels, assuming that's what the development will be. This would be a subdivision process requiring both Planning Commission and City Council approval. And again, a site plan would be reviewed as well, and the design of that would be held in conformance with the zoning code, the architectural and site design manual, and the bike and ped master plan. And staff does conclude that all requirements of the subdivision regulations have been met. So we are giving a recommendation of approval. I have listed the reasons for that. City Council has conducted a proper hearing. Planning Commission is recommending approval. All requirements of the subdivision regulations have been met. The plat will facilitate redevelopment and is consistent with the zoning and the concept plan. All agencies can serve the property. And finally, the criteria used to evaluate a right-of-way vacation do support the request. So that would conclude my presentation. The applicant is in the audience if you have any questions, or any of me as well.
Thank you, Meredith. Do we have questions of Meredith while she's available? I guess you were pretty thorough. We can move on then. I do need to ask for an ordinance number. I didn't do that earlier with the clerk.
It's a resolution.
Oh, here's an, I'm on the wrong page. I keep being on the wrong page here. Thank you very much. No questions then? Okay. Then we can go ahead and go to a motion.
Madam Mayor, you had mentioned that the G line is slated to be open in 2017. Do we have any information from RTD as to that, or what's the? I'm just looking for a specific, either from RTD or from the Federal Railroad Administration as to a specific information as to when the G line is opening, or how do we receive that information that it is opening in 2017?
They haven't given us an exact date. I think we're guessing it's going to be open in 2017 based on what they have told us. The FRA has allowed them to start testing on the G line, which I think I've heard tonight that it's going to start this Wednesday.
I was told that it was going to start Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Testing.
And we were told by RTD if they get, I believe, 57 to 62 good days of testing, that's a good thing, and the line could open up after that. So there's no guarantee it's going to open in 2017. We're hoping, and that's kind of a guess based on what we know so far.
Other questions? Public testimony? Do we have any? I don't have any signed up.
I'll run back. Oh, she does. Okay.
I do, but I don't have anybody for that particular item. Okay. Then I believe we can move on to a motion.
I move to approve resolution number 17-2017, a resolution approving a two-lot subdivision plat with a right-of-way vacation for property zoned mixed-use neighborhood and mixed-use commercial transit-oriented development at 11818 West 52nd Avenue, case number MS-17-03/Hans Ranch, for the following reasons. City Council has conducted a proper hearing meeting all public notice requirements as required by Section 26-109 and 26-407 of the Code of Laws. The requested subdivision has been reviewed by the Planning Commission, which has forwarded its recommendation for approval. All requirements of the subdivision regulations have been met. The proposed plat will facilitate redevelopment of the site consistent with the zone change and concept plan. Utility districts can serve the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense. The criteria used to evaluate a right-of-way vacation supports the request.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Wooden. Any other discussion while the opportunity is still there? If not, please cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Move on to item 3. I finally got to get to this item 3. Ms. Wooden, would you please read?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is Council Bill number 09-2017, an ordinance amending Chapter 26 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws to regulate and allow small cell commercial mobile radio service, CMRS, facilities. At issue, during the 2017 Colorado legislative session, the legislature adopted and the governor signed House Bill 17-1193 pertaining to small cell wireless service infrastructure. As it pertains to local governments, the bill does two significant things. Number one, make such facilities a use by right in all zoning districts, and two, allows them to locate in public right-of-way, ROW, and on utility and traffic signal poles in those locations, and in public utility easements with some limitations and subject to city review and approval. Based on this action, staff recommends the city adopt local regulations pertaining to the design parameters and approval processes for such facilities. The bill is effective July 1, 2017, and staff has received some inquiries from the small cell industry, potentially interested in making application for facilities in the city right-of-way. As such, staff recommends prompt action to ensure the city has the ability to proactively regulate their design and location, particularly when wishing to locate in the right-of-way.
Thank you. And this one, I do need an ordinance number.
This will be ordinance number 1621.
Thank you. Now I'm going to open the public hearing. Do we have staff?
Yes, Mayor. I will just make a few remarks, not just adding a little bit to Ms. Wooden's introduction. This is really done in direct response to the state legislation that takes effect July 1st. The city had, in fact, just updated our CMRS regulations, as I'm sure you'll recall, just back last fall in October. So we feel like ours are pretty up to date, but for the fact that the state has really carved out this unique regulatory environment for the small cell facilities, which are defined in state legislation as well as redefined again in the local regulations. And they really are, it's a kind of a unique aspect of the technology, and one that reflects the increasing data needs that various mobile phone and mobile device users need. So it really is a type of technology that is both small in a physical sense, and it's also a little bit unique in that they're not new antenna arrays, but they are boosters, essentially, that add capacity to the system for existing providers. So certainly an integral part of what's needed to have a good telecommunications system, and as I think we've always done, we try to carve out a reasonable way to regulate that. So as Ms. Wood noted, really two unique things about this ordinance. One, it makes these facilities, if they meet the size definitions, essentially a use by right in all zoning districts. And two, it compels cities to allow them with a reasonable process for review and approval in our rights-of-way and public utility easements. So we are really limiting the modifications in our local regulations to really be tailored to just address those two things, because otherwise we think our regulations are fairly up to date. Kind of building on that theme as it pertains to these facilities that might locate on private property as well, because there's no reason why they have to be specifically in right-of-way, though they could be under the regulatory framework that the state has created. But under in other zoning districts on private property, we essentially say we'll just treat them like everything else. I think we've not gotten any negative feedback from the industry about the reasonableness of both our design standards and our approval processes, so we feel just handling them in that same manner is really quite reasonable and appropriate. As it pertains to locating these facilities in the right-of-way, we do think that has the potential to have a more significant impact depending on the size of the networks that might be built by these private sector providers and come to us with potentially, we don't really know the impact in total, but with the number of facilities that might want to locate within our street rights-of-way. So the state legislation certainly contemplates that it's reasonable for us to create a regulatory environment and a permitting process around that, and that's really what we've proposed, is to create a permitting process through the Public Works Department, some spacing requirements to kind of reasonably limit the proliferation of these so we don't have an excess number of the facilities. We're prioritizing that they go on existing utility poles to the extent possible, and if not existing utility poles, then new utility poles that essentially look and feel like they could have been there previously, right? So they're similar in material and color and in height. One of the preliminary applications that we had received was for a pole that would have been a wooden pole and would have been 50 feet in height. Well, that's a material that's not typical for our newer utility poles and would look, arguably have a negative aesthetic look. And secondly, at 50 feet, which is a height that's significantly taller than most of the utility poles or traffic signal poles that you see in our right-of-ways, which are typically 35 feet or less. So we believe those are kind of two reasonable things that will let these facilities blend in the right-of-way. So that's our regulatory approach. In terms of kind of where we've been to get here, we did chat with you at a study session back on May 15th. We've been working expeditiously to try and get these rules in place before that July 1st effective date. We had a City Council first reading on May 22nd. Since then, we've been to the Planning Commission at a June 1st public hearing, and they are recommending approval of the ordinance. They did their good work, as they always do, and caught a couple of typos that we've corrected. So the red line version has the amendments as requested and recommended by the Planning Commission. Staff has also taken one final look at this. It's with some apologies, we've kind of rushed this a little bit through, but we took one final look at it in terms of the language of the code, and we thought there were some opportunities to just wordsmith a little bit from first reading. It doesn't change the intent of the ordinance at all, but it just clarifies kind of what standards apply for private property applications versus what processes and standards apply for applications in the public right-of-way. So we've included those red line changes in the ordinance presented for your consideration tonight at public hearing. And in that spirit, our city attorney also has, I think, a couple of comments to make with a couple more potential red lines for your consideration.
I have to borrow. Thanks, Council. I do have one additional change. As you might remember, House Bill 1193, in sort of an unusual incursion into local control by the legislature, dictates that these facilities are uses by right in public rights of way, and it also goes on to say in publicly owned easements, whatever that means. And it's really pretty rare for the legislature to tell you where a use is permitted by right, but they have done so. When you think about it, very few private facilities are allowed in public rights of way for good reasons. Public rights of way have pedestrians and traffic, and we need to carefully control the safety of those parts of the world. The few things that are allowed, and the one that would come to mind would be light poles, XL light poles, they are subject to a franchise agreement, And I got to thinking about, well, what about the potential for a private structure in the right-of-way? Now, you'll notice that the ordinance as drafted has a priority list and says the first priority is you put these cells on an existing public pole of one sort or another, you replace it. But we needed to provide for the circumstance in which there's just no existing pole that would reasonably accommodate this use by right, and they would build their own pole. And if that's true, then that's a private facility in the public right-of-way. And of course, my job is to think about, well, what happens? Somebody has a wreck, they run into this pole, it falls over, it injures someone. And clearly the city's a defendant. It's a facility in our right-of-way. It's a dangerous condition in the public right-of-way, arguably, for which immunity is waived, and the city can be sued. So I initially said, okay, I need to cover that. And I have, in the red line version of the ordinance, which is probably what you're looking at, almost the last, page 8, there's this list of things that they have to do if it's after the priority list of facilities. And there's indemnification and bonding. And I think it's important if you're going to put up a private facility or attached private facility in the public right-of-way, you should indemnify the city and you should have a bond. And that's a feature of franchise agreements for Excel. But it occurred to me that as written, the indemnification just extends to when they're located on a city-owned facility. It doesn't extend to the possibility, although less likely, but it could happen, that they build their own facility. So I wanted to make sure we get indemnification for both of those things. In fact, it's even more important when they build their own facility, when you think about it, because we have a lot less control over that facility after permitting. So the fix is really to just add a couple of words to the red line. And that's on page 8, and I'm looking at letter F, indemnification. You'll see it says the operator of a small cell facility which is permitted to locate on a city-owned utility pole. I would suggest after locate, you insert locate within a city-owned right-of-way or easement or on a city-owned utility pole. And then later on, it says shall indemnify against all claims arising as a result of that. I'd include the words location or attachment. So you not only get indemnification both for public poles that they would attach a facility to, but indemnification for a private pole that they might build, and then the location of that pole, because the private pole wouldn't really be attached, it'd be located. And those would be the two changes I'd ask for. While I have the chance, I'll also tell you that most cities, many cities in the state are racing to meet this same deadline to get regulations in place. And I expect, like any other new industry, we'll find within the next year that there's going to be some tune-up that we'll need to do this. I think we're probably 80 or 90% guessing right, but I'm just kind of warning you, in a year or so, we likely will want to fine-tune a little based upon the kind of applications we get in, and I suspect that we'll want to fine-tune it a little bit. But that's an ongoing feature of our land use code always. Those would be the two additional changes I'd recommend. I think you have a motion in the packet to adopt the ordinance with changes as suggested by staff, and I would just ask that those be included in those changes. If you make the motion, we'll assume that they are. Questions?
Questions of either Mr. Dahl or Mr. Johnston?
Just a slight clarification then, and just to make sure, I may be reading something slightly different because I'm looking at number 7 and 8, indemnification and bonding in the packet. So in your description, and I think it's in the language correctly, but indemnification against all liability and claims, not just property claims, right? So. And I think that's implied. I just want to make sure, because the bond goes on, obviously, to really, we're bonding against physical property.
That's right.
But the indemnification is broader and as written covers us for more than just property damage. Any other potential liabilities, legal liabilities related to someone getting hurt or. Yep. Things like that are covered. That's
exactly right. All liability would be both personal and property, and you'll notice I said that indemnification has to be in a form approved by the city attorney. So when they come to us with a potential for this, then I'll have indemnification form that they will fill out and that we'll hang on to. And that form will quite likely be even longer, in terms of in terms of the detail of its description. But this gives me the platform to require that form of them.
Any other questions?
Madam Mayor, Mr. Dahl, can you get me wording for that motion?
Sure, yeah.
Closing the public hearing, please give us a motion.
I move to approve Council Bill Number 09-2017, an ordinance amending Chapter 26 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws to regulate and allow small cell commercial mobile radio service, CMRS, facilities as amended on second reading, order it published, and that it take effect immediately.
Second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Duran. Any other discussion? Please cast your votes.
Oh. Please vote again. I hit clear. Please vote again. It's not my night.
New one.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you, everyone. Item number 4, Ms. Hoppy. Mrs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council Bill Number 10-2017, an ordinance approving the rezoning of property located at 6610 West 31st Avenue from residential 2R2 to residential 1C R1C, case number WZ-17-02, Gustafson. At issue, the applicant is requesting approval of a zone change from residential 2R2 to residential 1C R1C for property located at 6610 West 31st Avenue. The proposed rezoning area includes one parcel, which is approximately a third of an acre. The purpose of the zoning change is to allow the eventual construction of 2 single-family homes. The current R2 zoning allows for a duplex, but the smaller minimum lot size established by the proposed R1C zoning will allow the property to be subdivided into 2 parcels. The subdivision and rezoning will allow for the construction of 2 homes.
This is first reading, so please go ahead with a motion.
I move to approve Council Bill Number 10-2017, an ordinance approving the rezoning of property located at 6610 West 31st Avenue from residential 2R2 to residential 1C R1C on first reading, order it published, public hearing set for Monday, July 10th, 2017 at 7 p.m. in City Council chambers, and that it take effect 15 days after final publication. Second.
Second again by Ms. Duran. Please cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Item number 5, Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council Bill Number 11-2017, an ordinance approving the rezoning of property located at 6375 West 44th Avenue from Commercial 1 to Mixed-Use Neighborhood, case number WZ-17-04 Conway. The applicant is requesting approval of a zone change from Commercial 1 to Mixed-Use Neighborhood for property located at 6375 West 44th Avenue. The proposed rezoning area includes one parcel, which is approximately a quarter of an acre. The purpose of the zone change is to allow the property to be utilized solely as a residential use in the immediate future and have possibility of being utilized as a live/workspace in the future. At this time, the applicant is not proposing any new development or modifications to the site. If the property is redeveloped in the future under the proposed mixed-use zoning, an administrative site plan review would be required to confirm that proposed development meets the standards of mixed-use zone district. This has been to the Planning Commission. It was heard on May 18th, and they did recommend approval.
Okay, first reading. Please give us a motion.
Thank you. I move to approve Council Bill Number 11-2017, an ordinance approving the rezoning of property located at 6375 West 44th Avenue from Commercial 1 to Mixed-Use Neighborhood on first reading, ordered it published, Public hearing set for Monday, July 10th, 2017 at 7 p.m. in the City Council chambers, and that it take effect 15 days after final publication.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Urban. Please cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, Councilmember Urban.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's see here. The Wheat Ridge Business District was formed in a partnership between local businesses and owners and the city of Wheat Ridge in 2002 to help revitalize 30th Avenue. The effort was expanded in 2005 to service businesses throughout the city of Wheat Ridge. The Wheat Ridge Business District administers several grant programs throughout the city. The grant programs are matching grants with specific limits, including the following: the Revitalization Incentive Program, the Accessible Grant Program, the Commercial Exterior Paint Program, the Commercial Landscaping Grant as well. The city has contributed funding to the Wheat Ridge Business District beginning in 2011 with the following amounts: $95,000 in 2011, $40,000 in 2012, $90,000 in 2013, $45,000 in 2014, $45,000 in 2015, $45,000 in 2016, $45,000 in 2017. Therefore, as we look at this motion, we are now looking to add an additional appropriation of $100,000 to add an additional Facade Plus program to the Wheat Ridge Business District in response to the May 8th storm. And you can make a motion, or we can have.
Could you read the resolution, the title resolution at the top?
Sure. Resolution 20-2017, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2017 general fund budget to reflect approval of a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $100,000 for the purpose of funding the Wheat Ridge Business District Facade Grant Program. The Facade Plus Grant Program.
Okay. I don't know if we have a staff discussion on this or if we move to, okay, other than what's already enclosed here. Do I have, then would you like to go ahead and forward that motion so we can open it for discussion then? In other words, if you want to go ahead and move that, discussion will flow.
Well, I would also, we can open it for discussion. I'd also like to hear from the city treasurer, based on our discussions at the study session. We discussed the issue around the amount of money being received from the permits from the storm. So can we start with that?
Exactly what we need, then some additional information from Tulio as to what the monies are believed to be available.
So I'd like to refer you to the permits, inspections, and applications report that I passed out before the city council meeting. And this report was generated by the city manager and the planning director at my request to look at revenues for roof permits from the storm. So I highlighted in yellow some information that would be applicable to what's going on tonight on the discussion. So far, May 8th through June 9th, 2017, there's been a total of 926 permits processed, and then of that, 811 are the roof permits. And if you go very to the far to the right, the revenue generated has been, for that time period, about 30 days, $336,000, $677.53. If you extrapolate that out, I mean, nobody has a crystal ball here, but if it had been mentioned that there was potentially 6,000 roofs were going to be processed this year, so we're at 10%. If you look at inspections, May 8th through June 9th, 696 roof inspections. And if that goes out to the 6,000, that 336 would end up being about $3.3 million in additional revenue potentially to the city on roof inspections. And then there was also a question about how much money was actually needed for Fruitdale. The city manager had mentioned that at the study session. So if you look into the office of the city treasurer, the total funds report, what we have allocated from the city side is Fruitdale committed funds. I highlighted that in yellow. $830,311, which will be still available to the Fruitdale project. And then I talked to the planning director, and he said there'll be one more invoice coming in this week. So that'll be reduced a little bit. And then as far as funds go, the highlighted $1 million in agency bonds, that's going to mature. There's two of them, two $500,000 agency bonds are going to mature at the second half of this year. And we're probably talking to the city manager. We're not going to renew those bonds. We'll probably bring them back into the general fund for expenses, depending on how things go with Applewood Shopping Center. So the point I'm making is that while there's going to be some reduction in revenue from Walmart leaving July 7th, there's also going to be additional revenue coming in, plus more because of the storm. So it's a blessing and a curse. Luckily, nobody was hurt or injured during the storm, but it does generate a lot of economic activity, and you'll see a lot of new construction and jobs in the city of Wheat Ridge probably for the next year. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions about the report? Mr. Pond.
Thank you to the treasurer for providing the documents. I just one clarification on the Fruitdale funds is understanding the total funds report, which has this light item, and how that relates to our prudent reserve levels. So that's the one thing I can't quite make out here.
Your specific question is, what's our reserve policy?
Yes, what's our
How's that
reserve
relate?
policy, and how, and the relationship between the reserve policy and the report that I'm reading. So the reserve policy is a percentage cap. This is a dollar amount. That's great. I just want to know what the relationship is.
Sure. As you all know, the city council adopted a general fund unrestricted reserve policy that you'll maintain 17% minimum in your reserves. And coinciding with that, speaking about the Fruitdale project, city council also approved that project under the condition that the loans of approximately $2.6 million that the city was going to provide towards that project, those payments, incremental payments that we're making of about $310,000, I think, an invoice per month. Those payments would not be made if the city's reserve level dropped below 17%. So we have dropped slightly below 17%. So we did just receive the next invoice for the Fruitdale project. I believe it's about $310,000. So based on city council's direction and approval of the Fruitdale project, we cannot make that payment until we get our reserves back up to 17%.
So we can't make that payment until we get our reserves back up.
Correct.
And the monies that are coming in from the permitting aren't covering that, or they are? Or?
They will, yeah. And as the city treasurer noted, it was a blessing and a curse, this storm, but we are seeing additional revenues. And actually, since this memo that's in your packet was drafted, we have incurred or received additional revenues. So I think in my memo I said we needed potentially another $800,000 to get us back up to the 17% in unanticipated revenues. Since that time, that's decreased to about $660,000. So once we receive about another $660,000 in those permit revenues, which we didn't anticipate as part of the budget, that should get our reserve back up to that 17%. And then we can make that payment, and that will allow us to make that $310,000 payment without going below our 17%.
Okay, going forward.
Correct.
Madam Mayor,
Did you want to add something?
the city manager could correct me if I'm wrong, the city attorney, but I was under the impression too with that reserve policy that it would take a supermajority of city council to make the payment to go below 17. So in case of the council wanted to go ahead and have me sign the paperwork for the extra money for the Fruitdale project, the next payment, which is due, I think that the reserve policy would have to be voted on by the city council by 6 or more to allow that payment to be made. Is that true, Mr. Dahl?
Yeah, it is true. The reserve policy says to spend any below the 17% requires a supermajority vote.
So at this point, to make that payment, we have to have that supermajority vote?
Well, I guess
Or
that's a
waive
question
it,
for
or
Mr.
waive it.
Dahl. I mean, the Fruitdale agreement, development agreement was approved, saying that you wouldn't go below 17% to spend below 17%, which is on a different policy, it requires a supermajority. So I'm not sure how those two relate.
Well, I think to spend below the 17%, you'd have to have a supermajority, or separately, you could change the 17% rule generally, something I assume you don't want to do, that you don't need to do to just target this one item. But yeah, I think the bottom line is you need a supermajority to approve a payment below the 17%. And that payment will be actually a payment to Fruitdale that you're not obliged under the Fruitdale agreement to make, but you're not prohibited from making it under the Fruitdale agreement.
Mr. Matthews?
Okay, this may belong in the motion discussion portion, but I'll start now since we're talking about cash. This only shows income, anticipated income, and at some point in time, we're adding staff, we're working overtime. There's money coming out of the budget that I would like to see some net numbers before we get too carried away here. And also, I'm a little curious, if we have to, we're self-insured somewhat, I'm sure, for catastrophe, but how does our city's financial position stand on what the hailstorm is going to cost Wheat Ridge Inc.? And should we be saving some of this money to pay deductibles or whatever we're not going to collect from insurance companies?
Sure. I'll start with that question. We are not self-insured, but we're a member of a municipal insurance pool, CIRSA, and we have a $10,000 deductible for all of our claims for this storm. The storm is one event, so we only have one deductible. So for all the damage for this May 8th hailstorm, we'll pay a $10,000 deductible.
And the anticipated costs for extra staff?
Sure. We're still calculating that, but we do have some estimates, and Ken and I discussed that this morning. And right now, we're looking at probably coming to council at some point here in the next few weeks, one of the next council members, to ask for $300,000 in a supplemental budget appropriation to help pay for our additional contract services that we're bringing on for the storm. That's just probably will get us through the rest of this year. We'll probably have to do an additional, or we'll have to include it in the budget for 2018, but that will be part of the budget discussion. Probably another 200,000 maybe, we're thinking, up to maybe for next year, in addition to 300 this year.
Ms. Davis?
Did you hear? Is that answer? All right. Sorry. So I have a couple questions for the council members that are on the Wheat Ridge Business District. I have noticed that, there's been a decline in the funding to the Wheat Ridge Business District. But I also believe we've had several discussions on kind of the not as many applications. And I know it's kind of an ebb and flow, but I guess when you look at 2015, 2016, 2014, some of those dollars amounts. One of my questions is, did anyone ever get turned down? In other words, was the funding not adequate that people got turned down? And are we at that point right now? That if we don't do this dollar amount today, right now, that people are going to get turned down, or is that something we can look at in a month or two? So that's one of my questions, or that is my question. And then I just have a comment. I mean, I do want to support the Wheat Ridge Business District, and I think the Facade Plus program, is a great program, and, we can make the most of it. But I think one of the things is a lot of times, Mr. Matthews' comments is we need to make sure that our dollars that we're spending, our taxpayer dollars, are actually also bringing an investment back. And, you know, I understand updating a sign or painting a business, you know, does help at least aesthetically, but I think, again, something that we talked about in our retreat is to consider other programs that we could help business owners, and I'll use one of my terms, possibly knock it out of the park. I mean, I do think we have some examples of S-STEP programs that have been very successful, West 29th Avenue, Colorado Plus, some programs like that where, yes, there's skin in the game, but there's also skin in the game to make sure that the business owner is also creating or facilitating the appropriate business that would also benefit the city and themselves as an owner by bringing in more tax dollars and those types of things. So I do feel we need to support the Wheat Ridge Business District. I know they don't do the S-STEP program. I do know that they refer folks, but I do think that those are things that we need to bring out along with some of these changes that are happening because of hail damage that we propose that. I think everyone has seen what's happened on 52nd and Wadsworth and how they're changing that strip mall, and that's not going to be a facade grant. That's going to be like an S-STEP program. So I think in some of this we need to think a little bigger with some of this process, and again, we talked about it on our retreat. And I do have concerns about falling below our threshold amount and not really looking at some of the expenses as well. So back to the, business district question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was looking this way.
So it was a question to
There
the
was a
business
question I don't
district
think you received your
folks.
answer,
Yeah,
right?
I kept rambling, sorry.
She was asking, did you want to provide some of that information?
I guess the first place that I would look is at places like C+, Clancy's, Compass Construction, Crest Kitchen and Bath, Dairy Queen, Luke's Steakhouse. Those are all projects that we've granted money to, which has also then had them put in their own investment. And so I think that the business district is very necessary. Yes, sometimes we do have times when there's like not as many applications, but like at our last meeting, we had 3 applications, 2 were approved, one was denied, not because of funding, but because the board is very careful of making sure that we are staying within our mission of improving the property to the point where it will also put more money in the city's pockets later on down the road. And then part of it too is that our marketing was kind of outdated, and so we've spent some time on working on some new marketing and stuff like that. So, oftentimes, let's see, I've been on there since 2011, I think, or 2012, and oftentimes we look at our different programs and we say, we're not really meeting the needs of the community, and so how can we change our program to meet the needs of the community? And I would say that this Facade Plus grant program is A, in part that, and B, in part an opportunity to utilize something that was really bad, that really that affected everybody's properties in Wheat Ridge, and we also have the opportunity to then kind of piggyback onto that. So that's what I'd say about those.
I guess my question was, were you ever with the depleted funds that you could not offer a grant? I guess that was my question.
I don't believe that we've ever been in a place with depleted funds where we couldn't offer a grant. I would say, though, that potentially, and I would have to look in the past, like in 2013 when we ended up with $90,000, I think what happened is we ended up with a project and we didn't have the money for it, so we came to City Council and asked for more money.
We have another member of the business district, then let's move on to Ms. Wooden.
Okay.
Mr. Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I agree with many of the things that Janice said. We have turned people down, but it's usually because they don't fit the rules. We've never had a case where we didn't have funding or couldn't ask for more to get that. So I have a little bit of concern about this, there are a lot of moving parts that don't meet the eye. The way this was introduced at the study session was a little mixed up and very complicated. The business district has nothing to do with bubble loans. The business district has nothing to do with the HIP program. We don't do S-STEP. So all of those things are off the table, despite the fact they were talked about in the study session. That's not what we do. We have no authority to do that. Secondly, this was on the study session agenda before anyone on the Wheat Ridge Business District even knew about it. We had not discussed this program in detail at that time. It was an add-on to our recent agenda, and we had a total of 15 minutes to talk about this. And all we did in that 15 minutes is develop a gossamer concept of what a larger program would be. We didn't do anything else, and we named it. That's the second concrete thing we did. The third thing we did was appoint someone to create the rules, define the program, and set up the application requirements. So there is no Facade Plus program at this moment. There's no rules, there's nothing. We know nothing about this. The Wheat Ridge Business District has not had a chance to approve any such program, despite the fact that we have talked about this. Talked about a larger program than the ones we have been doing. I hardly agree with the whole concept, the whole idea of having a larger program in our quiver, in our arrows. I think we need that. But at this moment, we don't have it. The second moving part is that we really don't have anything to do with this storm. Storm damage is absolutely beyond our rules. That no application would be approved based on storm damage or deductible. The concept as introduced and talked about, and the justification of some, is that this would be an add-on to people who had storm damage, and they could add further programs onto their repair work. Well, that's a valuable concept. Well, right now, we don't even know what that means. We have no rules, we have no application process, we have nothing to do this. So, considering that it's going to be a long time before a lot of businesses are able to do any major work, and considering that there is no such thing as a Facade Plus program at this moment, this really doesn't fit what is practical and reasonable in real life. Then there's the aspect of the budget limit. We already have gone below the reserve by accident, and if we pay Fruitdale, we are likely to kiss the limit again, which would require a supermajority vote. So we're not ready to vote on this at all. One further part is there's no demand for this. Nobody has come to us and asked for something like this. So I don't understand why we are going to tie up $200,000 or $100,000 when we are at the very same time either going to delay a payment to someone that deserves it by our agreement, or we're going to go below our reserve policy at the very same time. We just found out that one of our major tax providers is closing down and leaving the city. And I just heard Patrick say we need something in the neighborhood of $900,000 to be able to move forward with no problems. And then there's the further moving part of Wadsworth. We have to save money for Wadsworth. We are going to owe about $3 million at some point. And so we have to think of that too. And the last thing I would say is that the Wheat Ridge Business District can get its act together, develop a program, make the rules, and then we can apply for money from the council anytime we damn well please. When we have a need, when we have an applicant, when we have a program, that would be the right time to do this. But right now, it is not the time to tie up $100,000.
Thank you. Ms. Wooden?
I agree with a lot of what Tim just said, and here's some of the comments that I have about the situation. I agree with this concept a lot. I think that getting our businesses to improve their facades is a wonderful idea. It's really needed in some areas. I agree with the concept. I have to agree with a lot of the things that have been said about the budget, that we have money coming in from permits, however, it's going right back out for labor. And that's extra labor and contract help that we need to handle these permits. We're going to have more money coming in from permits. However, we're also going to lose one of our tax income, where it's hard to know how much that's going to be right away. So that's going to pull that down again. And I also feel that even though we have a $10,000 deductible on our insurance claim, when it comes time for budget, I feel that the departments in the city are probably going to look at what they have, and I'm thinking of cars right now, and think of, okay, so how is the claims? Are we going to have more cars that we need? I feel like until budget happens later this year, we may have some other further requests for repairs or improvements to the city that we need to think about. Right now, I believe last week, we were told that the business district has $48,000 right now. And I'd like to make a suggestion or a proposal that right now we leave, the business district has some money right now that they can use, that we make it contingent, I don't know what the right word is, or contingent program that, similar to what Tim just said, that if the program is put together, the guidelines are put together, and it's marketed out to our businesses, and people come in and they're requesting money, and the business district does not have enough funds for that, the business district does come back to city council and say, this is the plan, this is the request, and that we can address it at that time. Because we don't know the money coming in, we don't know the money coming out, and like I said, I do feel like this should be addressed, and if some business out there wants to do this and needs the money, I totally think we should talk about it. But doing this right now is a little premature. I do want to have some kind of contingency plan out there for us to say, hey, if we do need $100,000 extra for this, at that point in time, let's look at where we are on our expenses, on our money, on our reserve, and then decide at that point in time.
Just a point of order, that we're discussing item number 6, a resolution on our agenda, and we do not have a motion at this point, so just a reminder.
Which is why I'd asked for a motion earlier. Would you like to make that motion, Mr. Urban?
Sure. You hadn't asked for that yet, but that's fine.
I did earlier.
Okay. Would you like to make, hold on.
I think where we got is we had a report from Mr. DiTullio and then questions from that, and that's where we were at. We're at a question place.
Sorry. Too many things going on.
Yeah, I understand. Seeing as I was on the wrong page for.
I move to approve Resolution 20-2017, a resolution amending fiscal year 2017 general fund budget to reflect the approval of a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $100,000 for the purpose of funding the Wheat Ridge Business District Facade Plus Grant Program.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I'd like a ruling from the city attorney on whether or not this vote, if we take a vote now, that this vote has to be a supermajority, since we will likely
go
Yeah,
into.
right.
That's a good point. We'd almost have to have a separate motion to decide to do that.
Well, if it's, I mean, it's a little unclear to me whether, it's not unclear. Approving this appropriation will take the city below 17%, right? So, I don't think,
Could you make that part of the motion?
to make it clear, yes. I mean, you could add to the motion, and in connection there with approving, the appropriation, the expenditure below the city's minimum reserve fund. That's the effect of doing it, and I think you might as well make it clear. Because I'll tell you, if you don't change it, the effect is clearly to go below, and so you'd still need a supermajority to pass this motion. So you might as well make the motion clear that you're going below the 17%.
If I may, as the motion is written, it's asking that it be paid immediately. I believe in the study session I indicated a desire that it not be paid immediately, that it be paid sometime in August. Does that make any difference relative to that matter?
Let's Mr. Pond, I think he's got a concept.
I just would make a suggestion, a way to somewhat honor the intent of the reserve policy, but sidestep the kind of creating supermajority vote on this right now is to just say, to amend the motion to say to make the payment when the funding is available above our prudent reserve policy. That puts it at a date uncertain, however, but it creates certainty that we're not agreeing to pay it. So then you don't need a supermajority.
That's correct. If you make the motion clear that approval and payment, the approval of the motion can be now, but the payment is not to be made unless and until it can be made in compliance with the 17% minimum, then it's a regular majority vote.
That's right. Separating the issue so that we're not voting on two things. We're voting on one thing in the.
So, I would like to retract my motion and move to approve Resolution 20-2017, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2017 general fund budget to reflect the approval of a supplemental budget appropriation when and if the funds are available in the amount of $100,000 for the purpose of funding the Wheat Ridge Business District Facade Plus grant program, not to go below our 17% reserve policy.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Hoppy.
No, seconded by Ms. Duran. I would like.
Oh, sorry.
I put my hand up for discussion.
All right, discussion then. Did you want discussion to start? Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't realize earlier, I tried to keep my comments to the question that was presented earlier. Here, the thing is that we have, on the business district for a lot of months, I would say 9 months, have had on our agenda how to have a larger grant program to encourage some of like the outdated old commercial building stock. Example, strip malls. If you look down in Edgewater, right across from Sloan's Lake, those are strip malls, but they used architectural design on the front of them to bring them up to date, so they are visually more impactful. Another example of a strip mall that has a lot of work that's being done to it to make it much more improved would be right off of Wadsworth and 53rd, the Arvada Marketplace, I believe it's called. They're taking out pieces of that strip mall and making it into individual buildings. So we've gone as far as, I've gone around and taken pictures of different strip malls to kind of collect some ideas. We've tried to find, I've tried to get my husband to donate free time to do architectural designs for it. I mean, this is not something that's just like, oh, hey, let's just all of a sudden we've got an idea and let's throw it around. It's been there. So for that purpose, and yes, we do have some money in the account, but we also have things like ADA grants. We have active people coming in and asking for monies for other things. And so if we had some seed money, we would be able to go out to some of these places and say, look, we have some seed money. We know you're going to be doing some improvements because you have to, and because you have insurance money to do it. And so on top of those, would you consider meeting with an architect? We can help you with your architect fees, looking at other facade improvements you can do to your building. These are things where we can bring C-rated commercial buildings up into at least a B+ commercial rated building, which is where we can get more people to come in and generate more sales tax dollars. So with that said, I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion. And I would like to amend the motion as stated, however, for $50,000 for the purpose of funding the Wheat Ridge Business District Facade Plus Grant Program, not to go below the 17% of the minimum budget requirement for the city, but to be given to the Wheat Ridge Business District when at the first opportunity.
So you're just looking to amend the 100 to a 50?
I'm moving to amend the motion from 100 to 50.
Amendment on the floor needs a second.
Second.
Mr. Pond has seconded?
No.
Oh, Mr. Rand has seconded, okay.
And let me be clear, although the amendment was expressed in lengthier terms, correct me if I'm wrong, Councilmember Hoppe, but you really want to just change the number?
The amount.
Is that right? Okay, fine.
That's what I understood.
She said when appropriate, didn't you added something in the end?
Yeah, I think
Same exact same.
she was kind of summarizing what
Regarding the reserves.
she was summarizing what Mr. Urban said that was kind of responsive to my request, I think, if that's right.
All right, so we have a motion and a second on changing the amount from 100,000 to 50,000, and I need a vote on that. Or discussion.
I think that's a step in the right direction, and I certainly agree with the whole idea of having a bigger arrow in our quiver. And we have indeed talked about that in the past, but we need to define that. For example, one of the things you mentioned already is available through Local Works. We need to be able to coordinate these things and get these things organized before we start appropriating money for these things. I'm going to vote against both of these, not because I don't like the concept, because I do like the concept. But we don't really have our act together enough to know what we're even doing at the business district, despite the fact that we've had much discussion about a larger program. B, we've got no demand right now. Nobody has demanded anything like this. And C, the city is in financial instability at the moment. So we can come back at any time and do this, but that's why I will vote no.
Right, Ms. Wooden and then Mr. Pond.
My question is regarding the $50,000 and when it would be available, and if we could get some definition on when that is. In other words, will it come back to us again and say, is the $50,000 available now, and then we appropriate it at that time? How does that work on timing?
Well, if you approve it this evening, it wouldn't have to necessarily come back to council for approval. I would we would make that payment when we reach our 17% threshold. Plus, yeah, with the payment, including that
Then I
payment.
have Mr. Rand, and I, right.
I'm going to vote for this amendment, and for a couple of reasons. I do think we should be concerned, as we've stated, about the flow of funds, both in and out. I think we've captured that in the main motion as it relates to the prudent reserve, and this won't be dispersed until we're at that point. So I think that covers that. It's a modest enough initial point for us to not be, I think, overly concerned in the long run. And I do believe that a program needs to be established, and the marketing and communication to get these people on board, I think, also creates a little bit of a buffer for that money to be immediately expended. However, and I think this is what everyone is saying that they agree to, I believe that what we've heard and on some consensus basis in the study session and tonight is that we're largely in support of the improvement, of the investment in our community, and making sure that there's a message out there to folks who want to do this work that that City Council has made funds available and that there's some interest in it. And I think that helps in the communication and the marketing ultimately. And because there's the safety net of the reserve policy inside of this, I'm comfortable moving forward with this amendment and then supporting the main motion after that.
I'm going to support this for several different reasons. One is I think time is critical. A lot's happened. We didn't plan a hailstorm, so obviously we couldn't plan to have this conversation way ahead of time. I think we need to kind of jump on the opportunity, let the businesses know that we are here to help them. Also, if, we don't know if there's any demand because we haven't made this available. We haven't said, listen, this is what we're going to make as an investment. So this is available to you. So of course we haven't heard anything on that note. So I am going to support this. What I'd like to know is, do we have any public comment regarding this? Did anybody sign up to discuss any part of this out there? Does anybody want to make a comment? Can we allow a comment here?
We have public comment availability now.
Okay. Great. Yes.
I don't think this would be, let's get through this amendment, please.
Okay.
Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have two questions that kind of stair step. Number one is it's my understanding, we already have $45,000 grant that's in the budget. And it says $50,000 now on top of that. So what they're in essence asking for is in mid-year, $100,000 instead of having coming to us at the budget process and asking for $100,000. And I'm just astounded that this is even going forward when a board member actually says we have nothing, we don't know where we're going to spend it yet. So why would we approve money for a slush fund? And I'm not necessarily against the concept, but why would we approve, we'll give you some $100,000 right now. You already have $50,000 surplus in your coffer, so that we're going to give you $150,000 to sit on until you decide how to spend it. I just don't think that's fiscally responsible. Thank you.
I believe you've all made a comment now.
So we have an amendment.
Yeah, we need to vote on the amendment. I believe this would be the time. This is voting on whether you want to increase the amount to $50,000 or decrease it really to $50,000, and that's all. All the other circumstances are the same.
Motion carries 5-3. This is the motion to amend. Carries 5-3 with council members Fitzgerald, Davis, and Urban voting no.
Madam Mayor. So I have not yet provided comment. I'd like to speak to, first, Councilmember Fitzgerald's comments. I'd like to apologize about adding these to the study session without bringing them to his knowledge first. I was under the impression that the board members of the Wheat Ridge Business District were made aware of these requests and this desire to provide the Wheat Ridge Business District with additional funds, given that the president of the Wheat Ridge Business District did, in an email dated May 22nd, outline what was desired and requested, and that was how I came to know of the request, and that's why I brought it forward and asked that we add it to the agenda. I did not come up with this on my own and asked that it be brought forward. It was brought to my attention, and that's why I asked for it to be brought to the table, was that it be considered because I thought that that was something that the Wheat Ridge Business District had desired to be seen. So that's why we were discussing it. It wasn't that we were trying to force something onto the Wheat Ridge Business District. It was that the Wheat Ridge Business District board members were already discussing it, and that's why we brought it to the table. So that's why. And to consider this as a matter of talking about the confusion regarding local works and the Wheat Ridge Business District. In the aftermath of this storm, we need to kind of consider all the different tools in our toolbox and understand what are the opportunities that we can take a hold of, not necessarily to rebuild, because a lot of, like Mr. Goff indicated, a lot of folks are insured and are able to recover through insurance and are able to take care of recovery through those types of means. But we want to be able to take some of these tools in our toolbox and take advantage of these types of situations. And in this instance, like with the Facade Plus program, take some of this, invest it back in our city, and sort of take advantage of this situation and really do something bigger and better. All those gardeners out there know that after a hailstorm, your garden doesn't die, your garden thrives. That's what happens after a hailstorm, and that's what we want to make sure happens with respect to our business community. We want to make sure that our business community thrives after this storm, and that's what I was trying to make sure of, is that we threw everything we could at this storm to make sure that we weren't missing anything. So if there was any confusion with respect to the Wheat Ridge Business District or Local Works, it was in an attempt to make sure that we weren't missing anything in respect to trying to recover from this storm. So Mr. Fitzgerald, I apologize if you missed that email from the president of the Wheat Ridge Business District in respect to this program and this attempt to take advantage of the situation. So to that end, the reason for trying to bring up this this program and trying to do this now and not wait is that we are going, as a city, going to benefit tremendously from this storm, but only if we do it right. And to the city staff's indication that we are only going to process anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 permits, that does not jive with what happened in 2009, that we had somewhere in the order of 9,000 permits that were issued. That storm was much less severe than this storm. The storm that we just experienced on May 8th was the most catastrophic storm in Colorado history, period, full stop. There has never been a storm of that magnitude that has hit our state, and so I think that it is prudent to take $100,000 of the monies that we are going to receive from the permit fees that we will generate off of this storm and invest that back, not in Lakewood, not in Arvada, not anywhere else, but back into our business community, and make sure that we not only recover and get back to square one, but thrive and grow and get back not just to where we were, but get to a better place and make our city better than it was before. And that's where I want to see our city be. Not just can we recover from the storm. I want to see us better than we were on May 7th. I want to see us where we can, how can we take advantage of the situation, not just recover. I want us to rebuild and move forward. So that was the impetus behind this, and the idea that we are somehow broke or that we're just scrimping by here, and it's just to me nonsense. And I think that this ask of $100,000, now it's $50,000, is just to me a pittance compared to what it will bring in revenue back to the city, in tax revenue, in the confidence of our business owners, and that to me I think is what we're going for, is trying to show our business community and our entire community that we don't just want to get back to where we were. We want our city to grow, and isn't that the whole purpose of the Wheat Ridge Business District, to encourage our business community to thrive so that we can bring in additional tax revenue, so we can do other projects and other programs so that we can have those monies to provide services to our residents. That's the whole idea here. So that's that's the impetus. That's the idea. That's the spirit behind pushing this forward. The implementation of this, just like the storm, is a little messy, but it is out of a desire to get it done quickly, so people know that that money is available, so that they can use this money quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I appreciate your saying that you weren't as aware of the condition of the business district before you had brought this idea forward.
I didn't say that.
Well, that there was information about the business district that was not available to you, or that you took it from the suggestion that Mr. DeMott had made, that we had all received a copy of as far as the plan was concerned.
It was indicated by Councilmember Fitzgerald that he had no knowledge of that prior to the study session.
That's what I'm hearing what you're saying. That what I'm saying to you is I'm responding to the fact that you were, the idea of bringing it forward was because of the letter that we received from the business district telling about the conditions. Okay? That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying that you were describing how you had come to this conclusion. All right. We've got Mr. Matthews.
Thank you. I'm reminded of a phrase from federal politics, and I'm not saying it right, but it went along the lines of never waste a good catastrophe. If you want to raise taxes or figure out how to increase your budget when you don't necessarily always can't put your finger on the exact need yet. And I think that's what this has fallen under, is we had a catastrophe, so let's go ahead and increase spending, whether before we know where the money's going, how it's going to be spent, what the need is, how many people are going to come forward. And if anyone's wondering why I voted yes on the last vote, it was so that we'd only have a $50,000 liability instead of a $100,000 liability. So that was my reasoning on that. I just don't see this. I think that in order to be stewards of the taxpayers' money, we don't say, here's money for whatever. We wait until whatever comes to us and says, this is the need, and now we have to figure out if there's a benefits to cost ratio. And at this point in time, it doesn't pass that. Here is the need that's been presented to us. It's just a matter of not wasting a catastrophe and trying to get some money out of the city and into another sector. Thank you.
Ms. Davis?
I just want to echo what Mr. Matthews said, and I think every one of us on the council does want to support the business district. We do want to create programs that are enticing for businesses to improve their projects. I mean, we ourselves even just said we don't even know if the money's going to be available till August. So, I don't think it's something that we've agreed, as a council in whole, that, hey, if there are some folks out there that need those grants, need those monies, that it is something that we'll look at. But until the program's developed, until we know the need out there and we actually have the money, why are we approving it? Now, again, it's not to say that we're not trying to be proactive and those types of things, but I think that we could still market it, that there's money out there to help folks. We could still do that and wait for the appropriation. So I think it's not that we're waiting for the money to go to Edgewater or Lakewood or those types of things. I think, there's some great ideas out there. There's some great programs out there. And until, again, we see the need and the requests, that we don't know what we don't know yet, but we are anticipating those needs and those requests. And I think as a council, we support it.
I don't know which one of you.
One thing I just would like to mention is that if, again, that I'd like to reiterate is when we have the seed money, then we can go out there and do the marketing. We haven't had the opportunity to market it. However, another thing is if we don't spend the money, then we won't be coming and knocking on the door as a board next year for the 45,000 that usually is in the budget that usually comes to us. So it's not like we're stockpiling money. If we're not utilizing it in our community, then we understand there's a better place for it to be.
Mr. Ray.
I was just going to say that, there comes a time when you have to step up, and this was a catastrophe, and you need to just step up sometimes. You need to just take that step of courage and just do what's right. So that's why I'm going to support this. But I also want to make sure we don't forget there is a public comment out there. And
I've not.
Okay.
He's given me
Okay.
a look or two.
All right. So I just want to make sure we get him up here. So thanks.
And I am going to call you in very quickly. I actually am a member of the business district too, and I was at that meeting where the whole thing was discussed, and Joey will tell us a little bit about it. And at that time, the plan was from the business district that that Joey was going to come forward and speak to the council and explain a little bit about it. But I don't believe the ask was going to be there at that time because there was some doubt about the very things that have been mentioned as the plan wasn't fully put together, et cetera. So anyway, please do come forward and tell us about what you were thinking of.
Hi. Thank you for your time. My name
Hello,
is Joe
Mr. DeMott.
D-E M-O-T-T. And I am the president of the Wheat Ridge Business District. I've been taking some notes. I want to try to answer some questions if I can. And I'm going to go backwards. And I didn't bring my glasses, so they're messy, and I can't read them. But, I want to say first, speak to the purpose of the Wheat Ridge Business District is to upgrade our aging commercial corridors and commercial buildings. That is to upgrade the demographic, upgrade the easeability of leasing the spaces, and to get higher sales tax producing businesses into these places. Our return on our investment is generally about 5 times what our grant is. So when we talk about incentivizing and putting skin in the game, we generally look at what are you bringing to us? Our programs are geared towards small things, small percentages of larger projects. We don't pay by any means 100% of any project. It is generally tiered in several aspects. One is years in business in Wheat Ridge. And if you're looking to upgrade instead of just replace. There was some talk about the STIP program and the bubble loan and the HIP loans and things like that. Those are incentive tools that we can use. A tool that we didn't talk about was TIF. TIF is sometimes a multi-million-dollar incentive to upgrade properties. We talked about losing a large sales tax producer in our city, leaving a rundown older building. They've been here since 1989, since I was in high school. Never redone the facade of that building. Moving out, that business is going to highly incentivized, new, modern, upgraded, demographically different locations, and that's where that business will go. That's the name of the game. That's business. And I'm sent here to talk about this not just on my own, but it was voted unanimously by the Wheat Ridge Business District to send me to ask for additional funding. It was voted unanimously at our Wheat Ridge Business District meeting that we desire to expand our program, somewhat permanently, but in the meantime temporarily. That program was monikered by our board member and council member, Mr. Fitzgerald. He's very creative that way. He's actually come up with a lot of neat and creative things for us on the business district in the last few years. I apologize if some people didn't get the email. I thought I'd included all the council members and the board members. You had some questions about why is this time sensitive. Everyone in town, every business, every home is going to go through a construction project in these next year and a half, within the next 2 years. The thought of going through two construction projects is painful. One is painful enough. Going through two is very painful. The timing that we ask for this is while we are doing our storm damage repair, which none of our funds will go to pay any storm damage repair at all. These are purely upgrades to our facades or existing structures. We've talked about a tiered program. This wouldn't be a 50% match. We've talked about a tiered program that would bring about 25%. So when you talk about skin in the game again, we're talking about 3 times the amount. The business will put $100,000 to get $25,000, and that would be the max on the facade grant. We were not talking huge amounts. There was a question, have we ever not had enough money? Yes, it has come up, 26 and Kipling. We have a grant out there now that we've been dangling for about a year and a half, and it comes from a program that we call our large project grant. They applied for a grant, and we tried to get them in conjunction to do the sign, and we've talked about different things. There's some different parts to that. But yes, we have had projects where we were not funded enough. Why do we need the money? Why do we like to have the money right now, $100,000 in our coffers? That's so that if someone comes, we can pull the trigger now. Again, back to the time-sensitive aspect, if they come in and they say, we're doing our construction in October, we'd like to upgrade, can you do something for us? If we say, well, let us go ask council for that, let us go in for an appropriation, we'll see what we can do, kind of a deal breaker, and that incentive of upgrading that property could dwindle and go away. I'll just fix my roof, forget it. I'm not going to do anything. You know, you talked about Edgewater, you talked about the Arvada Marketplace, you talked about losing revenue. Our goal is to up that revenue for us. We're all on the same team. We all want the same thing. Nobody wants to waste money. I know you have a tough job trying to decide where that money goes, and I just am here to ask on behalf of the business district that you give a little bit to us and see if we can replace some of that lost sales tax that some of these older buildings are going to be empty soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
We are, one more discussion on this, I believe. We still have to vote on the main motion.
Yep, main motion's 50,000.
And the main motion at this point
been amended.
is a 50,000, isn't it? Right? Based on all of the parameters as far as the funds availability, blah, blah, blah. Is anybody confused about where we're going?
We already voted on the 50,000, didn't we?
We voted on the amendment, and we have the main motion is on the floor.
The main motion still is on the floor.
For 100.
And the main motion has
No.
As amended.
Main motion is amended as $50,000 with the added piece of the not going below the 17%.
Mr. Matthews.
Just one last comment. I'd remind the business district that we're just, 3 months out from starting the budget process again? July, August, September? And we should get our packets. I mean, I'm just not sure I'm seeing the urgency here. Come to us with a need. From what I've heard, we don't have any projects in the queue right now. Come to us when we do our budgets, and we'll reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we are ready to cast our votes. Would that be correct? Please do so.
Doesn't feel like it's ready to go. No, that's not it.
That's not it?
That's not it.
I've cleared it a whole bunch of times. Okay, vote again. Motion carries 5-3 with council members Matthews, Fitzgerald, and Davis voting no.
Madam Mayor, while we're on the same topic, the city treasurer has asked me to raise for you some direction for him in terms of, and he may well add to it, he's got bills now from the the Fruitdale.
Fruitdale.
partners at just over $300,000, and to pay those would mean going below the 17%, and so he can't pay them until you're above the 17%, and he's assuming that direction, that there's no exception being granted for that, right?
That's my question is, do you want to vote on that tonight to allow me to pay that, or do you want to wait? The money, that $830,000 that you saw in that total funds report is sitting at the same bank that the developer uses for the project. What happens is they send a letter requesting the funds. I have to sign off on that, and they make a transfer to the developer. So my question is do you want to go below the 17% with a 6 supermajority vote, or do you want me to wait to sign off on that letter of intent? That's just came today. It's $310,000 that I have to sign off on or not. So do you want to vote, or do you want to not vote?
You're setting a precedent.
Just a little bit more information to add on that. If we did pay that, with the additional revenues that we've received in so far, it would drop our reserve would be 15%.
I'm sorry.
Our reserve, if we paid this
Oh,
$310,000, our reserve would be 15%.
Okay,
Just so
thank
you
you.
have that information.
Mr. Matthews.
Well, if we're going to have discussion on this, that's precisely why I voted no not to cut into the reserves in the first place. Was here we are. Are we going to go down to 15, and then a month from now, well, maybe 14, and 2 years from now, maybe 10? That's why I was against that methodology in the first place.
Mr. Pond.
I'd just offer consensus to provide direction well, I don't know that it needs to be a motion. You've asked us a question.
You would need a motion.
No, I mean, I'm asking just for consensus of the council that the point is that we don't have enough information on that business tonight. As it stands, our agreement with Fruitdale is that they don't get paid until we're above the prudent reserve, and so that means we leave it as is. That would be I'd just ask for that consensus.
Consensus that we
The
don't go.
agreement sits it stands.
The agreement stands as it stands.
So can I ask for a point of clarification? So does that mean that we'll pay the business district, so we'll $50,000 now? Or are we going to wait until Fruitdale
No,
gets
that's
paid
not-
and then?
Separate.
It waits. Above our reserves.
And Fruitdale's paid?
No, both do.
Existing bill.
Right.
What-
Right, but 50,000 is going to be easier to pay than 330. I guess that's
What
my
do we pay
question.
first? Do we pay-
Yeah, what do we pay first, is my question.
Yeah, we have a contractual obligation with Fruitdale to.
All
to
right,
make the payment.
that's was my hope, but I just wanted a point of clarification.
I would hope, is it the, Madam Mayor, is it the city treasurer that would make that determination? But I would hope that all contractual obligations are made before grant payments are made.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, we have the bill, we have the invoice from, for the Fruitdale project. We will not pay that until we're above our 17%. And then the second position will be the Wheat Ridge Business District.
Yeah.
So,
Simple.
I believe we can move on to item number 7. We've got 2 people out there that wanted to speak to it. I can't believe they're still with us, maybe 3. I think we've lost one of them. Ms. Duran, would you please read item number 7?
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. Resolution number 21, 2017, a resolution supporting Mayor Jay's participation in the Mayor's National Climate Action Agenda, continued support of the Wheat Ridge Environmental Sustainability Committee's mission, and a commitment to the goals of the Paris Agreement. Issue. On June 1st, 2017, President Donald Trump committed to pulling the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement. In spite of this decision, 248 mayors, as of June 1st, 2017, have agreed to continue to honor and uphold the commitments to the goals of the Paris Agreement by signing a mayoral compact. Signing the agreement provides the city of Wheat Ridge an opportunity to join with the growing number of cities that stand with the Paris Agreement. Colorado mayors who have signed as U.S. climate mayors include Aspen, Boulder, Breckenridge, Denver, Edgewater, Fort Collins, Lafayette, Lakewood, Longmont, Telluride, and Vail. The Paris Agreement highlights the local, national, and international concern and response to climate change. By signing the compact, the mayors are expressing their belief that protecting the environment falls on all levels of government, and that as leaders of their cities, they will continue efforts to meet each of their cities' sustainability goals.
Thank you. let me make one comment. I spoke to some of the other local mayors just today. City of Westminster is strongly considering it. There's having a lot of requests. I sent him some information that he needed, meaning the mayor, Atchison. Golden is turning it over to their sustainability committee, as well as, there was one other. But of course, Edgewater has, I'm sorry, Arvada, thank you. And of course, Edgewater has already gone for it and is promoting it. Really briefly, it's an effort to increase investments in renewable energy. We have a committee that will be looking at all of the variety of things that we can do that'll come before us as to a decision about that. The idea being to come up with several concepts that flow with the Paris Climate Agreement. And I decided that, well, I had the opportunity as a mayor, I could have just signed it, but I felt it was important that Ms. Duran brought it to me, as well as some citizens, and we have some that I would like to speak, that it was important for the council to be aware of what we could do. Now, let me call those two citizens. Rob Robinson, who spoke to us earlier about another matter.
Yes, thank you. As I mentioned, I'm Rob Robinson.
Please say your name.
Yes, 4 Hillside Drive, Wheat Ridge. I think it's important, I think this meeting of the mayor's meeting that's in the resolution is becoming a very useful time for the committee of the Wheat Ridge Environmental Sustainability Committee, because hopefully Mayor Jay will be able to talk to a lot of other mayors, find out what's going on in their cities, and report back to our committee with what she learns there. And in support of the additional support for Paris Accord and for renewable energy and the climate change issues in general, I would like to read the result of an opinion poll that was conducted in Jefferson County about a month ago. The results came out, I think, today or yesterday. The poll was commissioned by the Front Ranger, a Jeffco newsletter. And in that letter, it says that 77.32% said that they think their home city, whichever it is, should join and take part in organizations such as the Mayor's National Climate Action Agenda to learn how to combat the effects of climate change on their city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Was that his name? Yes. Eric?
Eric Wilson, WILSON, 3743 J Street, District 1. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm speaking in support of this resolution. And yes, this is about climate responsibility, but I think there are a lot of other benefits that go along with it as well. I've heard the clean energy future described as the biggest wealth creation opportunity of our generation, and I absolutely agree. And I urge council to join the 9 other Colorado cities, including Edgewater, Lakewood, and Denver, and really show Colorado and show the world that we want to be a part of this. We want to attract clean energy businesses to our city, to create jobs in our community, to save our residents and business owners money on utility bills, generate additional tax revenue, similar to the hailstorm, as well as just be more self-reliant in meeting our own energy needs, and during times of catastrophe, power outages, being able to meet our own needs and be more resilient. And then finally, just to contribute to a healthy and safe future for our kids and for our grandkids. So, thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, any questions or discussion? If not, we would appreciate a motion, and then, motion, please.
I move to approve Resolution Number 21-2017, a resolution supporting Mayor Jay's participation in the Mayor's National Climate Action Agenda, continued support of the Wheat Ridge Environmental Sustainability Committee's mission, and a commitment to the goals of the Paris Agreement.
Second.
We had a double second here.
Give me a name.
And Janice.
Motion's been made and seconded. I can tell there's some discussion needed.
Thank you. I think one of the things we have to clarify in this motion is, first, it is not specific to global warming. It is specific to a specific agreement, a contract, if you will, on who's going to pay what to whom and how much it's going to cost. It's not saying you agree with global warming. It's not saying you don't agree. So I've got a lot of paper here. I'm going to try and just pull out a couple of quick deals. The first thing to note is that the same computer models that say global warming is a problem also say that Paris will not fix it. If one were to graph the standard warming projections over the next century with and without Paris, the two lines overlap almost exactly. So for all of the cost, the Paris Treaty will have almost no effect on global warming. Nor does it say how much of the warming is natural and should not be counted against the 2 centigrade limit. That's a big issue. I mean, there's the sun up there that has an awful lot to do with what we have for warming and cooling. The Paris Agreement also veers into absurdity by its political and ideological language, requiring countries to address extraneous items like gender equity, biodiversity, poverty eradication, migrants, disabled persons, a just transition of the workforce, creation of decent work, and so on. So it's not just about global warming. Let me move on to my next one here, and I'll try and make this brief. It accomplishes very little. We all know that to start with, it's all voluntary. Even though we'll spend trillions of dollars, there's no one that's actually compelled to make a serious effort to keep that money going towards global warming. North Korea says pollution will double by 2030 compared with 2000 levels, but only if the rest of the world writes a sizable check. Otherwise, its emissions will rise even further. Peru says it can cut emissions by 30% by 2030 compared with its business as usual projections, though that would be a net pollution increase of 22% and is contingent on billions of dollars of funding. And I've got a list here that goes on through Iran, South Sudan, Nigeria, many of the 193 countries that everyone's so bragging about that signed up for this agreement. But what it amounts to is we have to meet their demands. So it's either pay up. If we don't pay, the American taxpayer doesn't pay, then they're just going to keep on polluting. No one's been able to figure out exact cost. It's in the trillions, though, by the time they get done. China has said it will hit peak emissions by 2030, so it's going to do nothing to stop emissions, and then it might begin its reductions. For the vast majority of the countries, their promises aren't feasible without a major influx of money. It's a little bit like the UN and everyone were NATO, where everyone said they're going to give 2% of GPD, and then we fund the whole thing, and they all maybe pay 0.5% or 1% of their GPD. At least $420 billion has been formally requested under country submissions to the Paris Agreement, according to Carbon Brief, a UK-based group that tracks international climate change and maintains a comprehensive database. That figure, however, is far lower than what will be ultimately required. Many countries do not specify exactly how much money it will take to meet their emission reduction standards. And when you say how much money it'll take, it's not how much of their own money they're going to spend. Is how much of our money, our taxpayers' money, that they're going to spend. Some analysts say the final figure for worldwide compliance with the Paris pledges would be in the trillions of dollars. UN officials estimated that it would cost at least $100 billion per year, and that figure could rise to more than $400 billion per year by 2020 to ensure compliance, which there's no way to ensure compliance. The world's top 4 emitters are either out of the Paris Agreement or are free under the deal to increase their emissions. In fact, China, under the Paris deal, is allowed to increase its emissions by at least 50%. India can double its emissions, and it's already one of the worst polluters. Russia can increase its limits above current limits. We've already committed billions of dollars, and we have no idea where it's being spent and to what end. The Paris Treaty hinged on $100 billion a year climate aid from rich nations and cuts in fossil fuels that would have cost $1 trillion to $2 trillion every year from 2030. It cost America as much as 2.7 million lost jobs by 2025. That includes 440,000 fewer manufacturing jobs. India makes its participation contingent on receiving billions of dollars in foreign aid from developed countries. That's us. The agreement is less about the climate and more about other countries gaining a financial advantage over the United States. And that's getting redundant. So all I'm telling you is, as an agreement stands, I have to agree with the president that it's a bad deal. Not saying I'm against climate change at this particular venue, but I certainly am not for committing to supporting an agreement that spends money without any return for us. If I was one of those 193 nations that said, yeah, come ahead, we'll sign up to this treaty because you're going to give us influxes of billions of dollars, I mean, who wouldn't sign up for that? Doesn't mean they're committed to aiding the planet, and that's my spiel.
Anyone else care to add to the discussion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, in all my time on City Council, we've never really had any kind of bandwagon bill such as this, and we just had the on Resolution 16-2017, a resolution honoring and supporting the Wheat Ridge Environmental Sustainability's committee mission. So my first question would be, is this going to be just a standard resolution on every agenda for the council from here to kingdom come, or at what point will we have said that this is where we stand? Because it just seems as though every single council meeting we've been discussing climate change, when in reality we need to be discussing the business climate in Wheat Ridge, we need to be discussing the recovery from the storm, we need to be discussing the business of Wheat Ridge as opposed to the business of Paris and everywhere else. And that, to me, is what the business of the Wheat Ridge City Council should be. But if I'm wrong, then why should we not be discussing the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime and the protocols there too, and the effect of human trafficking in Wheat Ridge? Because that, in my mind, has a greater effect on our citizens and those that are victims of human trafficking in Wheat Ridge, as opposed to any kind of impact that climate change has had as it relates to a real effect on our citizens here in Wheat Ridge. So, as it relates to my desire to have a city that is less dirty and less wasteful, I don't disagree with that desire to support our citizens' willingness to provide us in the form of the Wheat Ridge Environmental Sustainability Committee and providing us with advice on how to be more mindful and sustainable in our ability to reduce our expenditures and making sure that we are the most sustainable city that we can be, and reducing our costs as a city and all those types of things. But the fact is that this resolution does nothing. There is not a single thing that this particular resolution will do for the city of Wheat Ridge. If we were to actually take this time that we're spending talking about this and actually talk about the mid-roof inspection process and translate that mid-roof inspection process to allow, let's say, photographs instead of an in-person process, that would actually keep our city staff from buzzing around town in cars and actually reduce the greenhouse emissions by an untold number of carbon, the untold carbon footprint of the actual city. So that would have a tangible net benefit to the city. And if we were to spend time focusing on those types of actions as a city council, that at the end of the day, we could walk out of here and say, we did something to make our city less dirty and less wasteful. But this resolution does nothing. There is no tangible net benefit to the city by passing this resolution saying that we are jumping on a bandwagon. Because if we had, let's say, gone back when the Paris Accord was open for signature back in April 2016, when it was open for signature, because it's already been closed for signature, so you actually can't sign that actual agreement, then I would say you're not necessarily on the bandwagon. So that's my concern, is that this ship has already come and gone. We're not... this is not something that is an issue that should be discussed by the Wheat Ridge City Council. This is an issue that should be rightfully discussed by President Donald Trump and the powers that be in Washington. That is their job. Our job is to help our residents recover from the storm that occurred on May 8th and do everything we can to help our city rebuild. But here we are talking about the climate change, and this is the third Wheat Ridge City Council meeting in a row where we're talking about climate change, when in reality we should be talking about the business climate and our ability to recover from the storm. And that's why I will be voting no against this, because it does nothing to move the ball forward in our city.
Okay, I saw her first.
I think that talking about sustainability in our city does move our city forward, and we haven't talked specifically about quote-unquote climate change. We've been talking about how we can be a better citizen in the global world as a city, as a municipality. Just like how can you be a better citizen on your block? Or how can you be a better citizen in your school or church community? And so I think it's really important that we do talk about sustainability, and I'm glad that we've talked about it for the last 3 meetings. And I am also really glad that Ms. Duran and Joyce J have brought this up, and I support you guys, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Ms. Wood?
First of all, I really, really, really support Wheat Ridge environmental sustainability. I support our committee that we've put together. I can hardly wait till they get together and do some work and come back to us and tell us what their suggestions are. I felt like for years we've needed talk about trash service, talk about recycling as a city, talk about stormwater, talk about solar, talk about all these things. So I'm so glad that we're heading that way for the Wheat Ridge Environmental Sustainability Committee. However, I feel that this resolution is symbolic in nature, and I don't feel it does anything either. And so I'm going to be voting against it, not because I'm against environmental sustainability, because I am, but because I feel like this Paris Agreement is a separate topic. When it talks about in here the Mayor's National Climate Action Agenda, I think the mayors of America are much more concerned about their own neighborhoods, and they're going to do some action. I think the mayors across America are going to be inclined towards action, towards concrete steps, and that these are just words that we're reading right here. And I fully support Mayor Jay if she would like to sign this on her own, but I personally am going to be voting against it. And again, I'm anxious to see what our own committee is going to come up with. I feel like we have many, many citizens really concerned about this and have been for years about trash trucks every day on their street. But this particular thing, supporting the Paris Agreement and doing it as a city and as a city council, I'm not in favor of it. And it is because I feel that it's words and it's not action. The action we're going to take here in our city, and we're going to take it here in our council, and so are all the other cities across the United States. These are just words. It's us in the United States and in the cities that are going to do things. We're the ones that are going to make agreements on solar like we as a city have already done. We're going to do storm drainage. We're going to do all the things that we need to do in our own local neighborhoods. And that's what I support. And that's why I'm voting against this, because I feel it's just words.
Mr. Pond?
Well, thank you for the conversation. Obviously, there's a lot of sides to it, and I will not belabor any of it other than to say I will be voting for it. I am happy that our mayor cares about sustainability, and there may be imperfections in the resolution and or the process, but that's what I want in the city that I live in, and I appreciate your commitment to sustainability, and thank you.
There is one thing I want to say. To me, this is a written statement to anyone else around us that we are interested in progress, we're interested in the environment, we care about it, and that we're open for economic development because as we've learned, I've heard over and over again the opportunities that are available, and I want some company to be looking down the list and saying, wow, they support that in Wheat Ridge, there's their name. So I think it's not a heavy weight, it's showing a support of these things. Mr. N.
Yes, I agree. I don't think this is something frivolous or does nothing for our community and is a waste of time. I think it's important. We put together a sustainability committee for a purpose and a reason, and them getting direction from us that we support you in your mission and what you're doing. And as a community and as elected officials, we stand behind this. This is what we're working toward. So I think it's important to be committed to making a difference in our state, in our community, and fighting for generations to come. So I don't think this is a waste of time. And it's just words on paper that mean nothing. I think sometimes you have to just stand up for what's right. I feel this is right, and this is a commitment, and I encourage all of you to support this. Thank you.
Ms. Davis?
Just quickly, I do support this. I do feel there's flaws in a lot of it, but I do appreciate Mr. Ann and Ms. J, Mayor J, taking their time to be a part of this committee. I think that we can learn from other cities. I think we can learn from other mayors, and I think this is an opportunity where mayors and city members can get together and discuss, Denver County, how they were successful in their trash program and how they made it work, or other cities and how they maybe had other programs work that we could adopt and learn from some successes and failures of what other cities have done. So I do support the theory of it and the time around, and appreciate the time you folks are taking to be a part of it.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
I just want to say I'll be voting for this, and I think Councilwoman Duran kind of hit the nail on the head. This is what we aspire to. So I think this is just telling ourselves and telling our community that we aspire to be a clean city.
Boy, we have a chatty council tonight, don't we? It's great. This is council working well. I believe we're ready for the vote on this. Let's see, you made a motion. You seconded. Please cast your votes.
Motion carries 5-3 with council members Wooden, Matthews, and Urban voting no.
That ends the business portion of our meeting tonight. Moving on to the city manager's matters.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few updates. We've all heard about the Walmart closing. There's been a press release released by Walmart, and I've talked to you all individually. I'm sure you've heard it from your citizens, and might have been questions coming up. They are closing July 7th, as we mentioned. However, we are under the understanding that they are still considering a new store at the Clear Creek Crossing development. They are going to their real estate committee on June 13th and their final real estate committee on June 21st for decisions. So we'll let you know when we hear on that. Regency, in the meantime, who is the owner of the Applewood Shopping Center, has many long-term options for the site, but they're also looking at some short-term options too to maybe backfill that store in the short term until they can get their long-term options in place. Have a meeting tomorrow with the Colorado Division of Homeland Security to initiate a damage assessment from the May 8th hailstorm to determine if there's any assistance available to our local businesses through any loan programs. So I'll let you know how that goes. Clear Creek, just a reminder to citizens to please be cautious when you're around Clear Creek. If you notice the water is very high. We don't allow swimming or rafting or tubing in our portion of the creek. We never have. So we will be sending out additional reminders to our folks to be careful and cautious when you're around the creek because it is dangerous. That's all I got.
City Attorney. Thank you, Patrick.
Nothing tonight, thanks.
City Treasurer.
Thanks. I wanted to compliment staff on writing the online application system for the roofs. That came out of the planning department, and it was drafted by a couple of staff people in the planning department, and that has really loosened up things at City Hall as far as waiting in line. If you see that, it's on the bottom of this report. Talks about the number of applications that were submitted online. So that's a good first step, and it was a little homegrown application that was written by our staff to get our contractors moving ahead, so I wanted to compliment the planning department for that. This information, the numbers of the permits and the dollar amounts, doesn't come from Kathy Franklin. It comes from Planning and Zoning, and it was put together quickly for you tonight for this meeting because we wanted to have the information for you. So I was talking to our planning director, and I'll talk to Patrick tomorrow. We'll try to get the costs involved, also the contract labor involved on this report, so you'll see revenues and the expenses. It's my understanding the permit tech was just hired this week, so that's new labor coming in. So we'll try to have the revenue and the expenses on this report as going forward. So you'll see total revenue from the storm and then total expenses as much as staff can determine from the storm, which is mainly the contract labor. So Mr. Johnson and I will work on that, and Mr. Goff, and it may not be this week because they're busy upstairs, but we'll have it sometime in the future, probably the next meeting. Hopefully we can get that out to you. So that's it.
County City Clerk.
I just wanted to ask Mr. Urban, can you provide me with wording for your second motion? Not the one you retracted, but the new one that you made?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Elected officials, let's start with District 1.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
No, thank you.
District 2.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to ask the city manager as it relates to the building inspections services division. There was a change to the roof covering installation and inspection requirements BD-10-002 on June 6th, and I didn't know if there was any major changes to that policy on June 6th, or it seems as though the chief building officer made some revisions to that policy on June 6th, and I didn't know if that was a major change to that policy or...
I'm not sure. I don't have that in front of me. Mr. Urban, Mr. Johnstone, can you speak to that?
Mr. Urban, I think you're speaking to the change in our policy regarding roofing permits, which is what Treasurer Tertulio was speaking to as well. So we had initially suspended all online permit applications because the volume that one can submit applications on those through that portal in the past and during normal times was way above our capacity to handle those permits. After we kind of started to get a better sense of what kind of volume we were going to experience in terms of online permits, we're kind of thinking about this constantly in terms of how we can best deliver service to our customers in the most efficient manner possible for both us and for them. As I think all of you are aware, as the permits ramped up in the days and weeks following the storm, we were experiencing extremely high volume of permit applicants and contractors, and as we moved forward, we were having to cut off the line for getting in line to get a permit as early as 7 a.m. And we made the decision that what probably made more sense was to actually totally reverse course and come up with a permitting process online for roofing permits only. So that's really the change in policy that we implemented on. We did the memo, I think, on June 6th, and then it went into effect on June 7th or 8th. So that's what we're doing now, is that roofing permits only can actually only be applied for online. We created the new permit form that's tailored just to that, with the understanding that we aren't going to be able to turn those over at the same rate that we used to turn over online permits. So we're processing those on a first-come, first-served basis, and currently quoting about a 3 to 5 business day turnaround. So for those online permit applicants, they then, once we have processed their permit internally, they're made aware that their permit is ready to pick up, and they're given a time window of when to come in and obtain that permit. So we're still refining that process. We had a couple meetings today to kind of look at how it's worked the first few days. There's some kinks that we need to work out, and I know people were working into the evening here this evening, kind of refining some of those protocols. But that's where we're at right now in terms of the changes that we've made to try and adjust to the volume of the storm. One of the things that we're trying to fine tune, and I think Ms. Davis may have had a question for Mr. Goff this evening on this matter, but is how many permits we process for a contractor when they come in at their appointment. So the way, and tell me if I'm diving like way too deep on this, folks, but when you're applying for online permits, you do it permit by permit by permit, and you as a contractor can kind of apply for as many as you got capacity and time to apply for. But we get them in consecutively, and again, are able to process them in the order that they're received. But so a contractor might submit, 5 over the course of the day, but only the first one kind of got in line for the next available appointment, say the next afternoon window. So we're trying to work on some protocols of, okay, but in the meantime, I as the contractor submitted 3 others, I'm here, how many of those permits can we process for individual contractors? So that's one of the refinements that we're continuing to work on. And I think that was a question that maybe your contractor had, Ms. Davis, in terms of they had that permit for that initial online applicant, but in the meantime, I don't know what the number is, but they submitted 3 more, and, oh, by the way, I'm here, can I at least get a couple more of those permits processed? So we're refining that amongst other things.
Right. And I really appreciate the changes to the online system and the ability for contractors to submit online, because I was coming down at 6 a.m. Several times this past week to meet with the contractors who are waiting in line to kind of understand their process better and understand why they were waiting in line. And I appreciate the ability to kind of clear that line out and get them online. But the differences between these policies that were issued on November 28, 2016 under Michael and now under Brian, the changes that were made don't have anything to do with the online process. They're more substantive changes to the actual installation and inspection of the roof covering policies. So I don't know exactly all the changes, but it seems like they're more specific to, and I didn't have time to go through the specifics of it, but I just wanted to make sure that wasn't any drastic changes to the inspection or roof covering policy and procedures.
No, I think just refinements that we actually on our website had an old policy that was kind of buried in there. So we had 2 policies regarding some of our roof inspection requirements. The updated one that occurred late last year, which is when we reinstated the mid-roof requirement with the greater flexibility of being able to have between 25% and 75% of the roof covered when you're getting that mid-roof inspection. So there's a lot of flexibility for the contractor to be able to either be kind of just started
we're almost finished and still be able to have a successful mid-roof inspection and get passed, provided that the work that they're doing meets code compliant.
Sure. And to that end, just on that mid-roof inspection process, one of the things that I'd like to ask is that we at least consider making changes, and we can make this consideration later on, and I'm not exactly sure on the best process to do that with, but at least for consideration, I've provided a sample document relative to a possible solution, which would be a mid-roof inspection affidavit that would be available for a contractor to make an affidavit relative to that inspection that would allow them to sign this affidavit halfway through the installation of that roof, and either through the geotagging of photographs or some other means be able to inspect that roof either through that geotagging or through this affidavit, and be able to complete that process via email so that the city staff can either complete that inspection at their desk or otherwise speed up that process so we don't have to wait on that on-site inspection halfway through, because I have heard from constituents where either that inspection has either been pushed off or otherwise not been able to happen in a timely manner, either because of the contractor or the inspection appointment time, or any number of reasons why. We just have so many roofs to be repaired and the amount of time to be done. I think that something like this with a reasonable sunset to it would give us the ability to have still the integrity of the system, but with an ability to know that the process was adhered to. And every contractor that comes to our city is licensed, is tested. They take the IPC test, correct? That they're all tested through.
They are.
Yep, and that they're all licensed by the city.
They are.
Yep, and so at what point through, do they forget to be a roofer halfway through the process? Or to me, it seems like if we allow them to geotag the photographs, we know that those situations, those photographs are on that roof. So we know that those photographs are evidence of that compliance, and they're signing this affidavit, which is a legal document, that they are agreeing to it, and they've waived liability from this. So that this is at least something that other jurisdictions have used, and other jurisdictions don't even require that mid-roof inspection. And at the same time, if we don't do something, there are many individuals who will not even go through the permit process to begin with. And that's something we really need to consider here, is individuals who will forego the entire permit process, and they won't even see a mid-roof inspection because they won't get any permit process started to begin with. So I'd like us to at least consider either speeding up that process or in some way trying to maintain the integrity, but trying to make use of the technology we have available to us, and this is one way to at least try to do that. So I'd like staff to at least consider this, and for council to consider this as well. And as I mentioned earlier, this would make a considerable cost savings to the city by not having to run around town to every single residence by doing that inspection. So that's something that I'd like to at least consider. And I don't know, and I sent this over today, so I don't expect a response on that today, but I'll be checking back later on that. But the other thing that I have done recently is I have asked Governor Hickenlooper for assistance relative to this storm, up to and including asking him to make a declaration of disaster, knowing that declarations of disaster are something that do require certain thresholds, but we do not, obviously, as I've learned, meet that threshold. But I did write him a letter, and I'd like to read that. Dear Governor Hickenlooper, as you're aware, the most catastrophic storm in state history pummeled the West Metro area, Jefferson County, and the city of Wheat Ridge, resulting in extensive damage to homes, windows, vehicles, and roofs on May 8th, 2017. The storm surpassed the state's costliest wildfires, may cost up to $1.4 billion in damage. Because of the May 8th storm, every commercial and residential structure in the city of Wheat Ridge was struck by hailstones of a diameter greater than 1.75 inches, ranging to 2¼ inches. Wheat Ridge being Wheat Ridge, we thought we could weather the storm on our own and take care of our own, but now I see we need your help. Every business, hospital, and home in Wheat Ridge will need to be rebuilt, repaired, or otherwise fixed. By my personal estimates, this represents over 16,000 properties. By comparison, the 2009 microburst storm hit Wheat Ridge required over 9,000 building permits. Many of our residents have insurance and the means to take care of the recovery and repairs on their own. However, there are many other individuals and businesses whose livelihood and ability to recover from this storm may be tenuous at best. Please let me know what resources and assistance your office may provide to the city of Wheat Ridge, including, if necessary, declaring Wheat Ridge and the surrounding communities a disaster area, although I understand the 30-day window to do so may have already expired. Please advise what, if anything, you can do to assist us in recovering from this storm. And that was out of an abundance of caution and trying to make sure we've covered all of our bases. And I understand as a part of that, that's why we're meeting with the Director of Homeland Security later on. So I appreciate the city staff's jumping on that property damage assessment process and making sure that we've got all that taken care of. But it's not just the city of Wheat Ridge that we're concerned about because of the fact that we have the Wheat Ridge Water District, the up to including the Fairmont Fire District. You have all these other instrumentalities of government that surround us that will be impacted by this storm, that will be leaning on other instrumentalities of government for funding later on, and whose rates will go up either by insurance or by other means. That as much as we need to take care of ourselves, our neighbors are impacted as well, and so we need to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure all of our bases are covered. And so that's why I reached out to the governor in that manner to make sure that all of our bases were covered. So, and lastly, I just ask us to thank Commander Mark Cooney for all of his years of service for the city of Wheat Ridge. Thank you.
Did you want to add to that, Mr.?
Yeah, we could wait till everybody else is done, though, or if you'd like Ken Johnstone stayed specifically to address Mr. Urban's discussion about mid-roofs. So, if council would like to change our policy, we would like to get some direction on that tonight.
Let's just go ahead now.
Okay, Ken?
Yeah, I think it's certainly correct that not all jurisdictions require mid-roof inspections. We're familiar with at least one jurisdiction that uses some sort of an affidavit form in lieu of a mid-roof inspection. Certainly, Mr. Urban's correct that we do license all contractors, which is the presumption that they're qualified to do good work, and I think by and large they are. But that said, we still mid-roof inspections fail, right? And they fail for a reason, which is work was not done to code. I think in a situation like this, where there are a number of contractors that come from outside of the area, outside of the state to do work here, and frankly may not be familiar with roofing requirements in our jurisdiction, whether it be wind load, hence nailing patterns, material requirements, underlayment requirements, et cetera. So I think, long story short, we've certainly gone back and forth in terms of the impact, in terms of impact on the contractor's ability to efficiently perform the work on a roof, where the time is of the essence, right? I mean, they want to complete those jobs expeditiously, and we support that effort. We think there's significant value added for the consumer, ultimately the homeowner, and subsequent homeowners of those roofs, which is why we re-implemented the re-roof inspection. We've had, I can't put a number to it, so I won't try to, but we've had a number of roofs that were built in that, in previous times, that when the mid-roof inspection policy was not in place, that got substandard roofs, and the roofs have since failed. So we think it's a significant value added that our inspectors can perform as part of the permit fee that we collect in performing mid-roof inspections. We've tried to create as flexible a mid-roof inspection process as possible. As I already noted, we allow the roofers to have anywhere between 25% and 75% of the shingles completed, right? So long as we can view everything else that we need to review, which may include sheathing in the event that sheathing was required to be reinstalled or repaired, and then the underlayment and ice and water shield. So we get that all done at the mid-roof inspection. And again, if we're there in the morning,
we're looking for them to have 25% done, in all honesty, during this period. If we get there and it's relatively early and they're doing good work, but they're only at 10%, but we can tell everything else is per code, we're going to pass them. But if we get there at 4 o'clock and they're 75% done, that's fine too, and they've still got 3 or 4 hours of daylight to finish up the rest of the roof. So we hope that the way we conduct those mid-roof inspections allows for the contractors to still work very expeditiously in terms of kind of getting many roofs turned over, the bulk of the work in one day. So that's our goal. We understand why the question comes up. I mean, I'm sure a lot of contractors, if they were here at the podium tonight, would say, we'd love for you to get rid of the mid-roof, right? It's certainly a burden on them that they have to kind of schedule around that requirement. But we're of the opinion that we do think there's a big value added there, and that's why we put that policy back in place. I think it's, in my opinion, and this is solely my opinion, so feel free to disagree, obviously, of all the times to have a mid-roof inspection when we're going to be doing the majority of the roofs in the city with new roofs is right now, when we can ensure that people that are putting 30-year shingles on have 30 years of life below the shingle. So that's my thought.
Is it still a next day inspection you're calling?
We are still on next day inspections. We have not changed that protocol. That's been my clear directive. We've never not done next day inspections in my 10 years here. I'm not saying we're perfect. I'm sure we've missed some. I know whether that be human error, whether it be our error, or a contractor not knowing the right number to call in, or thought they left a message, or someone in the staff. So I'm not saying we're batting 100%, but we're still fully committed to completing next day inspections as a matter of policy, and we're staffing up with our contract firm to achieve that.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Just real quick. I promise
Yeah,
it's not.
please make it brief.
Yeah.
You've had a lot.
In the 2009 assessment of the building department, one of the recommendations that was made was relative to providing contractors with cell phone numbers of the inspectors to coordinate those inspections, and there were several recommendations made within that assessment. Were you familiar with that assessment that was made? And so were all those assessments or recommendations from that assessment implemented, or were some of them implemented and some not, or?
The latter. The assessment was done by an outside consultant,
Sure.
CBO, Steve Thomas, and under former Mayor DiTullio, the task force considered those recommendations and implemented, in part through council action and in part through policy, a series of those. The giving out the numbers of the inspectors' cell phone numbers was not one that was implemented.
Okay. Can we? I don't want them, but I mean, for a contractor that's working with them, as far as?
It's a question of balancing the ability of to do work when they're doing 30-plus inspections a day versus spending time on the phone talking to contractors. And we felt that on balance, particularly at a busy time like this, that interfacing with them on their cell phones out in the field with contractors is not the best use of their time. We are trying to create protocols internally so that they can frankly get out in the field more. As you may be aware, we've had to temporarily suspend the 2-hour time windows.
Sure.
Because frankly, if they spent the time doing two-hour time windows for 30 inspections on the phone, they'd get out of the office at about noon. And so we've had to just kind of adjust those protocols so that they can be as efficient as possible in the field.
So then again, at 30 inspections a day, what's the quality of those inspections?
The quality is excellent.
Okay, that's what I want to maintain then. If we're bragging about our mid-roof inspections, then we need to maintain that. That's, the other side of that. So one of the other things that we brought forward in the study session was funding for the building department and making sure you had the resources you needed for the building department. So making sure, and that was one of the other recommendations that 2009 assessment had, was making sure that that number of inspections didn't go above a certain threshold because of that simple fact that if you have too many inspections happening on a given day, then it's almost as though you're not doing an inspection. So I just want to make sure, and I'm not suggesting that the inspections are not of high quality, I'm just saying if there are too many, then it's almost as though they're not happening. So.
To be fair, we got to balance this, we're having every roof in the city that's probably going to need inspected and repaired at some point. We're doing the best we can, Mr. Urban, to manage that with the amount of inspectors we have, the amount of building permit techs we have. There's going to be a balance. You can't tell us to speed up and then tell us not to do these perfectly too. So, I mean, the staff, they're doing a great job. We're keeping up. We haven't had many complaints.
If it needs to be said, the staff is doing a great job, and I appreciate that. And I'm not saying that they're not. It's a matter of making sure that we are getting all the resources that they need.
And we are. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to come back to City Council with a $300,000 supplemental budget appropriation because we've brought on a contract building permit tech last week. So that's causing us increasing extra money. We brought in 3 additional contract inspectors in addition to the one we have in-house. That's probably about as much as we can manage right now and still have a workflow that's working and doing excellent work still.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on. District 2.
So thank you for answering my questions. Can I just get clarification, Mr. Johnstone, as far as the amount of permits in 2009? I understood it to be like 4,000. Is that?
Yeah, I think we pulled those numbers, and it was a quick report that we did, but we pulled a number that was like 3,700 residential re-roofs in that general time frame. Now, some of those might have trickled further out, so maybe it got up to 4,000 or so, but those are rough numbers.
And then estimated for what's going to happen now?
We don't know. We're thinking between 6,000 and 8,000, but we're kind of making that up, right? I mean, it's just there's no real way. We've reached out to the insurance industry, to the major providers to give us a number. They don't know either, I guess is the quick answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're still working their way through claims.
Mm-hmm.
And so they haven't been out to all the properties in the city, but we're certainly hearing anecdotally from people in the industry, both on the contractor side and the insurance side, that, as Mr. Urban alluded to, it could be the majority of the roofs in the city. Single family and duplex, we have about 8,000 structures, more than that in terms of units, because we have a number of duplexes. And then beyond that, we have 13,700 residential units. So the balance of those 5,000-ish units would be in multifamily structures. And of course, commercial structures have a lot of damage as well. And we haven't seen a heavy volume of the commercial multifamily in for permit yet, for whatever reason, if those are likely just more complicated insurance claims.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Well, thank you for the work, because I know you guys are still adjusting and trying to make the best of the situation. And your department's a constant work in progress with this influx of work. So thank you, because I know I called about my car today and I couldn't even get in for a year. So literally, they told me 1 year. So I appreciate you guys' flexibility and you guys trying to meet the needs of everyone.
And I think every hour they change it somehow, new idea, new concept to try to get the people through. District 3.
I'm just going to be amazingly light after all this heavy stuff here, but I want to congratulate the Parks Department for being a finalist for one of the best park and rec districts in the country. We're one of 4 finalists, so I congratulate them.
Thanks for bringing that up. Mr. Matthews.
Just wanted to thank Mr. Johnstone for the memo he sent out, outlining for us the changes in what you were going through to streamline and change procedures in order to handle the increased workload. That way I don't have to call you. When someone calls me, we have that information and we're all on the same page, so we don't start different rumors about where the city's going. So thank you for the information in a timely fashion.
Yes, I'd also like to say thank you to Ken and his department, and thank you for all the work that I'm sure your employees are doing, and that I certainly hope that council can partner with the city staff and work together, because we all are here to serve our community, and I hope we all feel that way. And the other thing I just want to say is thank you to everyone who came out for the Criterium race. It was very exciting, especially when the deer ran onto the course. And then we had a loose dog on there. So thank you to everyone that came out. I was there 5 hours, and when I left, it was still going strong. And I know we had a lot of residents come, and this is a Nationally recognized race right here in Wheat Ridge, Colorado. Thank you to Wheat Ridge Cyclery for sponsoring, and thank you to Local Works for putting it on. Thank you.
Jen, you were a volunteer there. I don't know if some of the others were or not, but I know I saw you as a volunteer. So I believe that's it. I'm not going to add anything else. We're adjourned.